The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
So yesterday, Paul Krugman, the columnist, the economist and columnist with the New York Times, said something that was, in my opinion, obvious. It's something that I say on the show real frequently. But for the mainstream media, for the New York Times, was shocking. He came right out and said the reason why Republicans have to continuously try to repeal the Obamacare is because they lied to their people about it in the first place. Fox News lied about it. Right-wing hate radio lied about it. The media in general, the corporate media in America, accepted those lies, didn't challenge those lies, didn't point out those lies. They just kind of went along with it. They kept taking their money from the pharmaceutical industry and from the health insurance industries, and they let those lies happen. And Krugman points out that, they lied to us about climate change. They lied to us about the healthcare thing. And the point that he didn't get around to making, that I'll make, is that there is a reason for these lies. And that is that these lies serve the interests of literally a few thousand, or maybe, at the most 10,000 billionaires and multimillionaires in the United States and the big companies that got them rich. Period. They don't want people to have health care because they would have to pay for parts of it with their taxes. They don't want, they want an eviscerated labor department. They don't want strong unions because they don't want to pay decent wages and benefits. They want to claim that there's no such thing as global warming because they make their money on fossil fuels. They make their money poisoning our planet. They make their money, making paper products, which produces all kinds of effluent and whatnot. They make their money making chemicals and all kinds of things that they don't want regulated. In other words, they don't want us to be protected because it might cost them a little extra. There is a consistent theme through all of this stuff. It's no secret. It's no surprise. But you're not going to hear about it anywhere except here on Free Speech TV. Seriously, think about it. Outside of Paul Krugman's column in the New York Times yesterday, I haven't heard this kind of language in a long, long time. It's not just, people say, oh, the Republican bill is terrible. No, it's a lie. Oh, the Republic, there's these tax reform, blah, blah. They are lying. Somebody needs to say that. And I do. And other people, other hosts on this network do. We call out the truth. And I think it's, therefore, super worth supporting. 877-378-8669. Call us now, please, and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network. We still haven't hit a $10,000 a day. Yesterday, we were right around, I think around 7, as I recall. So please, we really need to start hitting our goals. So, of course, there are premiums if you make gifts of a certain level, but you can make a gift of any amount. If there are lots of people watching, and a very small fraction of 1% ever call in and help out, and that's kind of a tragedy, because we're all benefiting from this, right? As a country, we benefit from Free Speech TV, from having progressive dialogue and discourse. So, but anyhow, back to the goodies. With an $80 contribution, There's the Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp, the one from Ben Cohen's group. With a $120 gift, you get the water bottle and the anti-pharma stamp, plus the book Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. That's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get the Law and Vengeance book by Papantonio, and you get Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, where he went over to Germany and talked to average Germans in the 50s. And this book is astonishing. With a $360 gift, you get the anti-pharma stamp and the free speech water bottle and Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio and They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and my book, Unequal Protection, an autographed copy of Unequal Protection. And for a $480 gift, excuse me, you get the Free Speech TV water bottle anti-pharma stamp, Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and Unequal Protection by me, plus, with the $480 gift, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book, about what has happened to our democratic republic as a consequence of billionaire money, frankly. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland or wherever I happen to be. We'll work it out, and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a meal together. Be nice to meet you. But the bottom line is that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the electrons flowing. We need to keep the lights on. We need to get the bills paid. And the only way we can do this is by coming to you and asking you to please call now 877-378-8669.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Well, we're starting to get some specific quantification, some clear numbers about the impact of voter suppression laws, this time specifically in Wisconsin. There is a lot going on in the news. Trump says he's going to go to Puerto Rico, a country that he used to run a hotel down there, Trump International Hotel in Puerto Rico. When he left, it was bankrupt and it cost the government $30 million, a little more than that, actually. Now, you know, to his credit, I guess, you know, I think it was PolitiFact fact-checked this, and they said when he bought into the hotel or cut a licensing agreement with the hotel in 2008, the hotel was already in financial trouble. He simply asserted that he was going to turn it around, he was going to fix it, and no, he left and it was bankrupt. So, you know, there are people openly wondering if Trump even knows that people in Puerto Rico have U.S. passports, that they're U.S. citizens. Does he even know this? I mean, it's very strange. But back to this. And Graham Cassidy, the Republicans are trying to decide if they're going to have a vote today or not. You know, do they want to get their members on record? How many Republicans in the Senate want it known that they wanted to destroy the health care of their state versus how many don't want it known? That's what it's coming down to. It's very strange. But back to this Wisconsin study. This is extraordinary. This was a study that was paid for by the Dane County Clerk's Office, right? You know, one of the major counties in Wisconsin. And it was the survey was administered by the University of Wisconsin Survey Center. So, you know, this is just like straight up good old fashioned clean science, right? This wasn't, you know, some right wing think tank or for that matter, some left wing think tank, if there are any. I guess there's a few, but it wasn't that. It was just a straight out study. How many people were deterred from voting? In other words, they probably could have voted. In fact, they might have had the right ID to vote, but they decided, you know, it's going to be too much hassle. Sort of like, you know, going through TSA at the airport, you know, yeah, okay, I really don't want to go through that hassle. I'll take the train. Okay. You know, increasingly from D.C. to New York, that's what people are saying. And you know, for that reason. So that was deterred. And then there were those people who were prevented from voting, who actually showed up to vote and were told, sorry, the law requires we give you a provisional ballot, but the law does not require we count it. So here's a ballot. You can fill it out, mark it up, but we're not going to count it. And in most cases, they didn't tell people that they're not going to count it. And this does not include, because they had no way of finding them or measuring them, this did not include the people who didn't register to vote because they were afraid that they didn't have the right ID. In other words, 100% of the people that I'm about to describe to you who got prevented from voting or were discouraged from voting were already registered. We have no idea how many people didn't register. And in fact, in many of these Republican-controlled states where they're aggressively trying to make it hard to vote, they're also making it hard to register, right? You know, the driver's license bureaus or the places where you can get your ID are, you know, running on a very temporary basis, or, you know, they cut back the hours in the months before, you know, when it's still possible to register to vote. They close some of them. I mean, this has been going on in the Carolinas and in the Deep South, literally for, you know, decades, maybe centuries. And now it's being done in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and whatnot. So here's what they found. They found that, now, keep in mind, Trump won Wisconsin by 22,000 votes, 22,748 votes. Okay, 22,000. Just looking at two counties, Milwaukee County and Dane County, just looking at these two counties, what they found was that as many as 23,000 people, 23,252 specifically, were deterred from voting. In other words, they, in many cases, actually didn't realize that they had the right ID to vote. But they just, you know, they said, yeah, I voted in the past. These were all people who are registered to vote and who voted in the 2012 election. All of them. And they said, you know, no, I just, you know, I don't think I can get through all this stuff. I'm, you know, 23,000 people deterred. They said, no, I didn't vote because I just, you know, it looked like it was going to be a hassle. An additional 14,000 people were actually prevented from voting. They were registered to vote. They showed up to vote. They thought they had enough ID. They didn't. So who was it? So here we've got a total, this is, you know, 23,000 plus 14,000, if my math is right, is 37,000 people. Trump won by 22,000 people. And this is just in two counties, by the way. So who was it who was deterred from voting? See, the Republicans, they've known this since 1980. Paul Weyrich was talking about this in 1980, 1981, right? He was saying, you know, and quite frankly, our leverage in the elections goes up as the voting populace goes down. So it's not like, you know, somebody just, you know, woke up on the Republican Party and said, gee, we got to stop poor people, young people, old people, and black people from voting. It was that they've been doing this all along. And frankly, the Democrats before them, at least in the South, at least in a way, you know, directed against people of color. You know, the scripts kind of flipped in the 50s, but frankly, both Democrats and Republicans were just fine with separate but equal and all that kind of thing. But the Democratic Party took a step forward in the mid 60s, and everything changed. So anyhow, who was prevented from voting? Well, it turns out that of the deterred, the burdens of voter ID, I'm quoting from the study itself. This was embargoed until 7 p.m. last night. And it's from Kenneth Mayer, the professor of political science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He said the burdens of voter ID fell disproportionately on low-income and minority populations. Among low-income registrants, and that's people with a household income of under $25,000 a year, 21% were deterred compared to 7% for those making over $25,000. Among high-income residents, if you make over $100,000, only 2.7%, a little over 2% of people said, you know, I'm not sure if I've got the right ID. I know it's going to be a big hassle. Screw it, I'm not going to vote. That was only 2.7%
among wealthy people making over 100 grand a year, 21% among people making under 25,000 a year. With regard to the racial breakdown, 8.3% of white registrants were deterred from voting. 27.5% of African Americans were deterred from voting. This, by the way, was based on the statewide database of registered voters, WisVote. As I said, it was administered by the University of Wisconsin Survey Center, funded by the Dane County Clerk's Office. The survey found considerable confusion about the law, they add. Most of the people who said they did not vote because they lacked ID actually possessed a qualifying form of ID. This confusion may be the result of a lack of effective efforts educating eligible voters of the requirements of the law. Well, it's not just a lack of efforts. It's an intention. I mean, they're intentionally trying to confuse people around this. In fact, Mayer, the guy who ran the study, he said the 11.2% figure is actually a lower boundary since it does not include people who didn't even register to vote because they lack an ID. So we know that probably something like 37,000 people just in these two counties in Wisconsin were either prevented or deterred from voting. The vast majority of them being low-income people. We don't know statewide because they didn't have the budget to survey everybody in the state. They just did two counties, but you can kind of extrapolate from that. The Republicans have got this thing going. The Republicans have got this thing. This is how they're going to win elections. They're going to keep you from voting, especially if you're old enough that you might not drive anymore, and so you haven't kept your driver's license current. Or if you're young enough that you haven't started driving, or you're going to college and you haven't had the need for a driver's license. Or if you're disabled and you can't drive. Or if you just happen to live in the inner city and you don't need to drive, tough luck.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The Republicans are, it seems to me, quite literally pinning all their hopes on two things, this voter suppression and support from the billionaires. We'll get to that second one in just a minute. And welcome back. Gary in Kingmont, West Virginia. Hey, Gary, thanks for watching us on Free Speech. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom.
Hey, Gary. Greed has no heart.
Thom Hartmann, one of my true heroes.
Oh, back at you, Gary. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I just had to say, you earned it. You earned it.
Thank you.
Probably my little rant here. We rant, right? We have to rant at times.
It seems. So what's on your mind?
The divider in chief, Donald Trump. I hope you're listening, Mr. Trump. You're not standing before me. I would say it right in front of you. I really would, and I'll do. He's such a real man. Him and his supporters trying to frame a lie. You're right. It's a lie. A president calling good people SOBs. That's a lie. FDR, what's causing all this? It's the same truth. FDR said it best. We have earned the hatred of entrenched greed. A culture of greed, and this is about what I say also, a culture of greed and egos and trying to be famous. It's absolutely unsustainable. It's unsustainable. Greed has no heart ever. I mean, where is the decency? How much money do you need for a human being and people that are just work so hard for low wages in comparison to what's going on in America? This is wrong.
I agree. And did you see where the head guy at Equifax? This is hysterical. The head guy at Equifax who, screwed up and let hackers get all of our financial information. And then him and several of his buddies, or at least a number of the senior executives, I believe the CEO is one of them, I may be wrong, dumped a bunch of their stock before they announced this, before the stock price took a hit. Now he is leaving Equifax. That's supposed to be like the good news. Richard Smith is resigning. He's going to get $18.4 million as his golden parachute.
Great man.
Yeah.
Enough said. My case is closed for now.
Yeah.
Keep up your great work.
Okay, I'll do my best, Gary. Thanks a lot for the call. Good to hear from you. Mike in Wickliffe, Ohio. Hey, Mike, what's up?
That's me, Professor Hartmann.
Hey, Mike.
Professor Hartmann, it's an honor to speak to you first. Second of all, a caller called yesterday and was wondering if Ken Burns and Lynn Novak would play the audio tape of LBJ and Everett Dirksen.
Mm-hmm.
They did, and they even went a little bit further.
Really?
And proved that Richard Nixon was a liar.
Wow.
Number two, the outrage of the week. Reading in the Plain Dealer this morning, an op-ed by Joe Davidson of the Washington Post. Andrew Acosta nominating Ronald Reagan for the Labor History Hall of Fame.
Right.
The Labor Secretary, Andrew Acosta,
Right.
actually nominating, I know he was, they brought up the fact that he was in the Actors Guild. The fact was he was an FBI plant and a rat.
That's right. That's what he did. As president of the Screen Actors Guild, he was telling Hoover who he thought were who should be on the blacklist, who were the communists. Oh my God. Well, I'm glad to hear that Ken Burns went there. That's pretty damn impressive. Mike, thank you for that. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Valerie with Free Speech TV. We're proud to provide you with independent, unfiltered news and documentaries. And as our valued viewer, you can help us continue bringing Free Speech TV well into the future. Join our Pearly Gate Rebels, our planned giving program. Your gift of any size will help ensure democracy endures through an informed citizenry. You can donate property, money, or assets. It's easy. My spouse and I are proud Pearly Gate Rebels. We're doing our part to ensure that Free Speech TV will be here to deliver thought-provoking news and information well into the future. Join us. Call 877-378-8669 or email me at valerie@freespeech.org. Rebel against media owned by billionaires and become one of our Pearly Gate Rebels today.
So I mentioned there's a two-legged stool. I'm sure there's a third leg. We'll have to figure out what that is. But there's two major pieces to the Republican strategy for acquiring and holding political power. And this fundamentally goes back to what Henry Wallace was asked in 1944, when the New York Times in June of 1944 asked the Vice President of the United States at that time, the sitting Vice President of the United States, they asked him, are there fascists in America? I mean, keep in mind, we were fighting a war with fascists in Germany and in Japan. Are there fascists in America? If so, who are they, and are they dangerous? And Henry Wallace basically came out. You can look this up. I mean, it's still in the New York Times. I've written several pieces about it, quoting it at length. So if you just plug my name and Henry Wallace's name into a search engine, you'll get it fairly quickly, I'm sure. Maybe the word fascist, too. But in any case, what Henry Wallace said was, yeah, there are fascists in the United States. And the ones that you have to worry about are not the guys who are going to the Bund meetings, with a swastika on their sleeve and waving around a silly flag. Those aren't the ones you have to worry about. The ones you have to worry about, Henry Wallace said, are those who speak with, great and eloquent patriotism. But in fact, I'm paraphrasing here from memory, but in fact, they are the spokespeople for vested interest and monopoly. And their ultimate goal is to seize political power along with the economic power which they already have. In fact, to use that economic power to seize political power so that they may keep the average man in eternal subjection. That's my recollection of the last paragraph of Henry Wallace's article in the New York Times. That's pretty close. And that's what has happened now. FDR said they hate me and I welcome their hatred. He was speaking specifically of the vested interests of his day. America has a cokehead problem. We've got a bunch of politicians who are beholden to a series of billionaires. It's not just, David and Charles Koch. It's, you've got Robert Mercer, you got Shelley Adelson, you got a bunch of these billionaires whose names you wouldn't recognize. But they're playing huge, outsized roles in determining who's representing you and what the legislation is. Yesterday, there were several articles. There was one over at Daily Kos. There's one in the Washington Post. There was another one, I believe, on the Hill. And in fact, I think there might have even been one in Politico that were basically asking the question, okay, this is like this Republican repeal Obamacare thing. It's like Lucy and the football, right? I mean, how many times is Mitch McConnell going to get all the Republicans up here and say, yeah, let's take away everybody's health care. Yeah, we promised that in the election. And then, Lucy pulls the ball, right? In this case, Lucy being the amalgam of Rand Paul and John McCain and Susan Collins, and perhaps a few others. And asking the question, why are they doing this? And the consensus seems to be that, and in fact, one of the articles even, flat out asserted that in the last couple of weeks, there was a meeting between a bunch of billionaire donors to the Republican Party and a bunch of Republican senior elected officials. And what the donors said to the Republican elected officials was, we've been funding you guys for a long, long time. We've given you a free ride. We've been taking care of you. We got you elected. We keep you elected. We're not going to do this anymore if you don't give us our damn tax cut. Get rid of that health care for those so-called average working people. To hell with them. We want our tax cut. And, we want to get rid of that 3.8% added tax on capital gains. So we get rid of that. So we're not paying for people's health care. And then we want so-called tax reform. We want a big tax cut for our businesses so that we can buy back more of our stock and we can get even richer. And the Republicans said, oh, my God, if we upset these people, they're not going to give us any more money. And that's why they're doing the vote, even though they know it's going to fail. They're doing the vote to say to the billionaires who own them, see, we tried. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't help it. Susan Collins, she's got a mind of her own. John McCain, he's got cancer. He's not going to run for re-election in all probability. We can't control him. Rand Paul is just a nut job. I mean, you got to help us elect a few more Republicans, please. And these billionaires are going, I don't think so. It's getting real weird out there. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So what am I missing here? Suppress people of color, poor, old, young, all that kind of thing. Number one. Number two, take all that money from the billionaires. There's got to be a third leg to that stool. So yesterday, Paul Krugman, the columnist, the economist and columnist with the New York Times, said something that was, in my opinion, obvious. It's something that I say on the show real frequently. But for the mainstream media, for the New York Times, was shocking. He came right out and said the reason why Republicans have to continuously try to repeal the Obamacare is because they lied to their people about it in the first place. Fox News lied about it. Right-wing hate radio lied about it. The media in general, the corporate media in America, accepted those lies, didn't challenge those lies, didn't point out those lies. They just kind of went along with it. They kept taking their money from the pharmaceutical industry and from the health insurance industries, and just, they let those lies happen. And Krugman points out that, they lied to us about climate change. They lied to us about the healthcare thing. And the point that he didn't get around to making, that I'll make, is that there is a reason for these lies. And that is that these lies serve the interests of literally a few thousand or maybe
at the most 10,000 billionaires and multimillionaires in the United States and the big companies that got them rich. Period. They don't want people to have health care because they would have to pay for parts of it with their taxes. They don't want, they want an eviscerated labor department. They don't want strong unions because they don't want to pay decent wages and benefits. They want to claim that there's no such thing as global warming because they make their money on fossil fuels. They make their money poisoning our planet. They make their money, making paper products, which produces all kinds of effluent and whatnot. They make their money making chemicals and all kinds of things that they don't want regulated. In other words, they don't want us to be protected because it might cost them a little extra. There is a consistent theme through all of this stuff. It's no secret. It's no surprise. But you're not going to hear about it anywhere except here on Free Speech TV. Seriously, think about it. Outside of Paul Krugman's column in the New York Times yesterday, I haven't heard this kind of language in a long, long time. It's not just, people say, oh, the Republican bill is terrible. No, it's a lie. Oh, the Republic, there's these tax reform, blah, blah, blah. They are lying. Somebody needs to say that. And I do. And other people, other hosts on this network do. We call out the truth. And I think it's, therefore, super worth supporting. 877-378-8669. Call us now, please, and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network. We still haven't hit a $10,000 a day. Yesterday, we were a little right around, I think around 7, as I recall. So please, we really need to start hitting our goals. So, of course, there are premiums if you make gifts of a certain level, but you can make a gift of any amount. If there are lots of people watching, and a very small fraction of 1% ever call in and help out, and that's kind of a tragedy, because we're all benefiting from this, right? As a country, we benefit from Free Speech TV, from having progressive dialogue and discourse. So, but anyhow, back to the goodies. With an $80 contribution, there's the Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stampede stamp, the one from Ben Cohen's group. With a $120 gift, you get the water bottle and the anti-pharma stamp, plus the book Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. That's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get the Law and Vengeance book by Papantonio, and you get Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, where he went over to Germany and talked to average Germans in the 50s. And this book is astonishing. With a $360 gift, you get the anti-pharma stamp and the free speech water bottle and Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio and They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and my book, Unequal Protection, an autographed copy of Unequal Protection. And for a $480 gift, you get the Free Speech TV water bottle and anti-pharma stamp, Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and Unequal Protection by me, plus, with the $480 gift, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book, about what has happened to our democratic republic as a consequence of billionaire money, frankly. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland or wherever I happen to be. We'll work it out, and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a meal together. Be nice to meet you. But the bottom line is that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the electrons flowing. We need to keep the lights on. We need to get the bills paid. And the only way we can do this is by coming to you and asking you to please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Sue Nethercutt in the chat room, she suggests to me
for the third leg of the stool, and I don't know why I didn't catch this. In fact, I've been talking about it. You know, Paul Krugman's piece in the New York Times, I think it went up electronically yesterday. I'm guessing it's in the print paper today, in which basically he says that the Republican Party exists based on lies. You know, they lied to us about the war in Iraq. They lied to us about their health care plan, about what was in Obamacare to begin with and what they would do to replace it. They lied to us about, you know, what they wanted to do about Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. They lied to us about global climate change. The Republican Party, they lied to us about voter fraud. The party, in order to function, in order to serve the right-wing billionaires and the corporations that they represent, on the one hand, and in order to serve the fractious herd of cats that they've got to pull together in order to get elected, right? You got to have a few gun nuts, and you got to have some anti-abortion people, and you got to have some right-wing fundamentalist Christians, and you've got to have some people who are just, you know, hate government, in general, who are, you know, paranoid. You got to have people who think that their gun is going to be taken away. You got to have people who hate people of color. You got to have people who hate people who are gay. This is the Republican coalition. So they've got to do all that. And that a lot of that is involved in lies too, because by and large, you know, they don't care about the situation with regard to people of color in this country. They don't care about the situation with regard to people who are, who are not straight white men in this country. I mean, they care ultimately only about the economics. And so, yeah, okay, sure, if you want to have legalized pot, that's fine. You know, libertarians like that because it doesn't hurt any billionaires. And in fact, they might even get rich. So anyhow, great third leg for the stool, Sue. Thank you for that. Just in case you missed it, by the way, you know, the Republicans constantly say Obamacare was passed by reconciliation. It wasn't. It actually got a supermajority in the Senate. They say Obamacare was rammed down our throats with no hearings. That's a lie. There were over 70 public hearings about Obamacare. They say Republicans had no input. That's a lie. There were numerous Republican amendments that were accepted, including one that said that all members of Congress have to be on Obamacare. Another Republican lie. They say that it was written in secret, behind closed doors. It wasn't. It was written right out in public, out in the open, through the committee process. Obamacare was. But this Republican deal is all the things that they lied about the Democratic deal. So they're getting caught in their lies. But anyhow, they finally held one hearing on this, the Republicans, yesterday. And you know how many members of the public they allowed to sit and listen to that one hearing that they held? 3 of these guys were dressed like lobbyists, classic lobbyist uniform, according to more than one observer. And the remaining 2 looked like just kind of average people. That's right, the remaining 2. They let 5 people watch the hearing. And they had to keep a lot of reporters out. Oh, the room is just too small. There were all kinds of great big rooms in the Capitol building that were available. But no, we got to. In fact, somebody made the joke. Dana Milbank. He said maybe the Senate janitor's closet was already booked. In other words, we're going to find the smallest room we possibly can. And meanwhile, Jeff Sessions proves he's a snowflake. I mean, there's just so much going on. I'll get to more of that as we continue through the program. But let's pick up some of your phone calls here. Omar in Herndon, Virginia. Hey, Omar, what's on your mind today?
Tom, thanks so much for taking my call. Congratulations on your daughter wedding. Before you know it, you're going to be asked to babysit your grandkids.
Yeah, we hope so. So what's up?
What I wanted to call about is that, back in the days, just going through my recollection, wouldn't the Republican held by a judge regarding voter oppression? They were ordered to stop oppressing voters or intimidating voters back in the 80s? Yeah,
it was caging specifically what the Republican Party, there was a multi-decade court order in effect
I believe it's still in effect. And because what Republicans used to do is they used to mail out a card to people, and if that card was not returned, then they challenged your right to vote, and in fact, they knocked you off the voting rolls. Right? Yeah, it's called caging.
Yeah, and they're in violation of that ruling now. And I think,
in my opinion,
the Democratic Party need to, basically go to court and make sure they get fined. And the last thing I wanted to say, with all this voter oppression going on throughout the country, I really think that it's going to take non-minorities to get this elected president voted out. Because, I think the Republicans are going to go, they're going to probably oppress a lot of the African and minority voters a lot. And it's going to take people like you, people like Stephanie Miller, and other, good American, what I call great American, to vote these.
The bottom line is that white people made Donald Trump president. He took 53% of the white female vote and I think 58% of the white male vote. And white people are going to have to atone for that. I don't know how to say it beyond that, but yeah, I'm with you. Omar, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Marie in Oak Creek, Colorado. Hey, Marie, what's on your mind today?
Stockholm Syndrome. White people have Stockholm Syndrome, and we don't know it.
How so?
I kind of want to go ahead. I'm sorry.
How so?
That especially with women, that we have been so duped and so lied to that we've ingested those lies, and that we have allowed that to become part of our worldview, part of our being. And we've got to break the grip of Stockholm Syndrome.
So Stockholm Syndrome is essentially identifying with your oppressor and adopting their values system. So you're saying that middle class, by and large, white people in the United States have identified with the corporate CEOs and the billionaire class, and to their own disadvantage, frankly, and have helped put these people in power. Is that what you're suggesting? If so, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why the divide and conquer stuff. As long as we keep people completely ignorant of what's going on, then, or at least semi-ignorant, then we can perpetuate the system. What I really wanted to go to, and I hope you don't mind me going back to your first segment, is Trump's remarks Friday night about the NFL. Mm-hmm. I've been very disturbed about the violence in football and the growing violence for a long time. Been very disturbed about that growing militarism and the link of football and violence with militarism. I've been very concerned about the racism, but there was such misogyny embedded in what Trump said, and it is a hidden misogyny that's pervasive through our culture. Think of the words that men use when they want to insult or demean one another. They almost always refer to women, and specifically their mothers.
Right, or gay men. One or the other.
Or gay men. Yes, absolutely. Though that language is so pervasive. I'm really kind of glad that MSNBC and CNN last night were allowing his full statement instead of bleeping him. I even noticed Stephen Colbert even went ahead and used the word. Yeah. Normally that's bleeped, or normally there's a moment of propriety, and we don't.
Well, that word is sort of on the edge because it also has a dual meaning. It also means literally and legally a female dog or a mother dog.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely, and hear how demeaning that is also.
Right.
I mean, the fact that word is constantly used, but the misogyny is a big piece of it, and I keep wondering. I was thinking that might be the third leg of the Republican plan, that we completely disenfranchise through dehumanization and demeaning language, imagery, continually being repeated. We demean over half the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that was certainly present in the election, in the 2016 election.
Certainly. Yeah, I agree with Hillary Clinton that if she was a man, there would have been she would have easily won the election.
Absolutely.
And and we need to constantly point out she got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump did. Even at that. So excellent points, Marie. Excellent points all. Thank you for calling and making them. Anthony in Sugar Grove, Illinois. Hey, Anthony, what's on your mind today?
The last said about divide and conquer.
Uh-huh.
And Vice News did a segment on their Friday night episode about gerrymandering in North Carolina and around the country, and it was amazing. I mean, I've listened to it and I kind of understood what it meant, but watching what they did in North Carolina, where they divided up Asheville completely in half, and Greensboro, they had a university in Greensboro. I don't know what university it was, but literally cut the university in half for the congressional line. And it's just amazing what they've done, and with Red Map and packing and stacking minorities. And I would encourage you and your listeners just to check it out. It was really, really awesome.
Okay. It sounds interesting. It sounds good. Anthony, thanks for the heads up on that. I appreciate the call. Andrew in Petersham, how do you say it in Massachusetts, the town? Petersham. Okay, great. Hey, Matthew, Andrew, what's up?
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, you're talking about Republicans and their donor class and whatnot. And what I don't think it's discussed enough is another way in which the rich and powerful use to influence not just policy but create ideas, and that's through various foundations. It's nothing new. You look at people like John Olin, the Kochs, obviously, Scapy, all of them. Scapy has the Heritage Foundation. He's their biggest contributor. I mean, Joe Kors was part of it, but he really got the ball rolling. You have the Kochs and the Cato Institute, and, John Olin. And the thing about John Olin is his front was attacking academia, and the media to some degree, but mainly academia, and basically putting foot soldiers into colleges to infiltrate them with ideas. And they hid behind, they weren't upfront with their main causes because they knew they would be trumped upon. They were very clandestine with it. And so was Scapy and the Heritage Foundation and whatnot. And those things don't get discussed enough. I mean, you think of philanthropy as something good, and they hide behind the skies. And I hardly ever hear it discussed.
Yeah, it functionally hasn't been discussed since the 1980s, Andrew.
It goes way back to even, you have these influential people, these schools of thought that, go back to, I forget his first name, but his last name was Lafarge. And these are pre-John Birch Society thinkers that really influenced these elite that we're talking about, these oligarchs. There's no other term for them.
I'm with you. Andrew, I gotta run. Thanks for the call. Well said. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls after this. And welcome back. Tim hey, Tim, I got no city or state for you. Where are you calling from?
Hi, Tom. I'm calling from Park Ridge, Illinois.
Okay. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to, I was listening to you this morning as far as what that third leg is. And the third leg has to be the outside intervention of Russia. I think as time goes by, it's becoming more and more clear that this election was stolen. I think Hillary Clinton, listening to her on these talk shows and things, I haven't read her book yet, she's being very honest as to what she could have done better. But really, at the end of the day, between voter suppression, the other two things you talked about, the donor class,
the big thing that she talks about is Jim Comey's letter. I've seen two interviews with her now where she says that was the moment at which she lost the wavering middle, as it were. But that had to do with Anthony Weiner, which had to do with Hillary Clinton's email problem, and I find it so weird and ironic right now that we have at least 6 members of the Trump administration who are using private email servers. That George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and Karl Rove all used private email servers on the GWB43.com website. All of those emails vanished. I mean, it was something like 1 million emails vanished.
Right. Colin Powell did, Condoleezza Rice did.
Yeah, a bunch of them. And
they want to lock her up.
Yeah, and there's no outrage about this. And then, yeah, you're right. If there is specific foreign involvement in our elections, that needs to be explicitly outlawed. And right now, you've got, for example, large corporations in the United States that are owned by the Chinese military that are lobbying our government and getting changes made to our laws. You've got, countries like Israel, for example, Egypt, India, a number of countries that we have very, very large foreign aid relationships with that actually aggressively lobby inside the United States and try to shape American public opinion. The allegation is that Russia did that, through buying ads on Facebook and everything else. And if that's the case, there needs to be hell to pay for that. That's, and we need to prevent that from ever happening again. There were, 20 some odd states now that have reported that their electronic voting systems are online, and they were getting penetrated. They were getting penetrated by the Russians. They were getting penetrated by order of magnitude. I mean, for every Russian getting in there were thousands of other people getting in there as well. And what the hell? Why is anybody getting into these systems? Why do we not have, secure, non-internet-based, vote on a piece of paper? You've got a paper trail. You can check it out afterwards. Why do we not have that? And then this issue of these ads being bought with rubles on Facebook to get in to try to stir up people about race in the United States. I want to know what's going on with that. I want to know what, is that the whole story? Is that half the story? What's going on? Who's doing that and why? I mean, this stuff needs some sunlight. It all needs some sunlight. Tim, thanks a lot for the call. This whole idea of, allowing, well, I guess I've said it all. We'll be back. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Corky in Hilton, New York. Hey, Corky, what's on your mind today? Corky? Corky, usually you're right there. I'm going to put you on hold in case your phone is having a problem here, and we'll try Dee in Bellevue, Washington. Hey, Dee, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I'm just so proud of you, what you just said. Hopefully you can hear me clearly.
Yeah.
I'm just so proud of you because I think it was this is my opinion, cyber war, and we lost. So we have to think about what our new leaders, whether it's Russia or whomever, want from us. They're using race to manipulate the masses, just our ignorance, our fear. But I'm just proud of you that you've come to that conclusion, and I'm just taking it to where
Well, I'm saying explicitly, I want to know what the hell's going on here. If there are foreign countries buying ads on Facebook designed to heighten racial division in the United States, that should be illegal, and that's something that we should, we need to find out about. My suspicion, frankly, Dee, and because none of us know, we don't have the details. But my suspicion, Paul Manafort has deep ties into that part of the world, and some of the less well-regulated, shall we say, and more competent and yet low-cost hackers in the world are coming out of that part of the world. And so we don't know if this came out of the Russian government or if this came out of Paul Manafort and the GOP, cycled through there. Whatever it is, I want to know what's going on. And I don't think that any country, whether it's Russia, whether it's Israel, whether it's, fill in the blank, right? There's 100 other countries you could put in there, should be directly, for that matter, Saudi Arabia is running anti-Oman ads or Qatar ads, here on television in Washington, D.C. And it's like, what? Really? I think that this should be banned. Anyway, back to you, Dee.
I remember during the W administration, the teach the test, they got rid of critical thinking.
Yep.
So we don't. These are the questions that we, as a massive. I mean, because now it's coming to fruition, the results of that time for this generation. In reference to simple things like donation, Trump said that he donated to the victims of the Harvey hurricane victims in Texas. But no one has really looked into it, like where it's from your personal money. Let's see it. You said you did it. Let's see it. Same as the veterans when he did that fundraiser for the veterans until a reporter brought it to the attention. He says he's a billionaire, but no one wants to ask proof. Again, that's lack of critical thinking. In reference to health care, it's basically Republican health care is saying you're too poor to live. It's not about the beautiful mind that you possess in the circumstances you may find yourself. That could be the next invention or cure or whatever the circumstances. The bottom line is you don't have the funds. You don't have the right to live. So I'm surprised to see America saying, no, we want to wait in 24-hour lines at a stadium, hoping to see a doctor for 3 minutes just to tell us, oh, well, if you could have taken care of this 6 months ago, take the door to the left. Where is that? Oh, it's death, because we can't help you. It just goes on. I mean, as an employer, when I hear right to work, I'm like, yeah, right to work. That means right to earn less. But as an employee, you probably think it's my right to work. And so we don't do that kind of critical thinking. We're at a point that we're so distracted by all of this hate, ignorance, and greed and jealousy that we're not seeing the bigger picture, that third leg of the stool, as you put it.
Yeah.
And we have a new President Obama was the last elected president. And now we have, I don't know what America holds in the future, but I don't know what America holds.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Well, we have a president who was selected by the Electoral College, not by us. 3 million more of us wanted Hillary Clinton as president. But the Electoral College, which was created to give the slave states more political power in Washington, D.C., and to protect their so-called right to maintain that institution, that was the beginning and end of the Electoral College. Were it not for the Electoral College, Al Gore would have been vice president. He got 500,000 more votes than George W. Bush did. And Hillary Clinton would, she got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump did. This is, among other things, a terrible anachronism, and it's useless now, and it needs to be replaced with a national popular vote. I'm with you on that. And yes, we have not seen. Trump has very publicly, all the way back to the 80s, touted donations that he's given to various groups. Very rarely do the groups come forward and say, yeah, he actually gave us the money. So we'll see. We'll see if he gives us $1 million or not. Dee, thank you for the call. Very well said. We'll be back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by EcoWine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, EcoWine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
So yesterday, Paul Krugman, the columnist, the economist and columnist with the New York Times, said something that was, in my opinion, obvious. It's something that I say on the show real frequently. But for the mainstream media, for the New York Times, was shocking. He came right out and said the reason why Republicans have to continuously try to repeal the Obamacare is because they lied to their people about it in the first place. Fox News lied about it. Right-wing hate radio lied about it. The media in general, the corporate media in America, accepted those lies, didn't challenge those lies, didn't point out those lies. They just kind of went along with it. They kept taking their money from the pharmaceutical industry and from the health insurance industries, and they let those lies happen. And Krugman points out that they lied to us about climate change. They lied to us about the healthcare thing, and the point that he didn't get around to making that I'll make is that there is a reason for these lies, and that is that these lies serve the interests of literally a few thousand, or maybe at the most 10,000 billionaires and multimillionaires in the United States and the big companies that got them rich. Period. They don't want people to have health care because they would have to pay for parts of it with their taxes. They don't want, they want an eviscerated labor department. They don't want strong unions because they don't want to pay decent wages and benefits. They want to claim that there's no such thing as global warming because they make their money on fossil fuels. They make their money poisoning our planet. They make their money, making paper products, which produces all kinds of effluent and whatnot. They make their money making chemicals and all kinds of things that they don't want regulated. In other words, they don't want us to be protected because it might cost them a little extra. There is a consistent theme through all of this stuff. It's no secret. It's no surprise. But you're not going to hear about it anywhere except here on Free Speech TV. Seriously, think about it. Outside of Paul Krugman's column in the New York Times yesterday, I haven't heard this kind of language in a long, long time. It's not just, people say, oh, the Republican bill is terrible. No, it's a lie. Oh, the Republic, there's these tax reform, blah, blah, blah. They are lying. Somebody needs to say that. And I do. And other people, other hosts on this network do. We call out the truth. And I think it's, therefore, super worth supporting. 877-378-8669. Call us now, please, and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network. We still haven't hit a $10,000 a day. Yesterday, we were right around, I think around 7, as I recall. So please, we really need to start hitting our goals. So, of course, there are premiums if you make gifts of a certain level, but you can make a gift of any amount. If there are lots of people watching, and a very small fraction of 1% ever call in and help out, and that's kind of a tragedy, because we're all benefiting from this, right? As a country, we benefit from Free Speech TV, from having progressive dialogue and discourse. So, but anyhow, back to the goodies. With an $80 contribution, there's the Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stampede stamp, the one from Ben Cohen's group. With a $120 gift, you get the water bottle and the anti-pharma stamp, plus the book Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. That's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get the Law and Vengeance book by Papantonio, and you get Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, where he went over to Germany and talked to average Germans in the 50s. And this book is astonishing. With a $360 gift, you get the anti-pharma stamp and the free speech water bottle and Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, and They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and my book, Unequal Protection, an autographed copy of Unequal Protection. And for a $480 gift, excuse me, you get the Free Speech TV water bottle and anti-pharma stamp, Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and Unequal Protection by me, plus, with the $480 gift, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book, about what has happened to our democratic republic as a consequence of billionaire money, frankly. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland or wherever I happen to be. We'll work it out, and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a meal together. Be nice to meet you. But the bottom line is that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the electrons flowing. We need to keep the lights on. We need to get the bills paid. And the only way we can do this is by coming to you and asking you to please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us is Dr. V. Ram Ramanathan. He is a distinguished professor at Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego, UNESCO professor of climate and policy at Terry University, New Delhi, India. The website scripps.ucsd.edu. And you can tweet him at Scripps_Ocean. Dr. Ramanathan, welcome to the program.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. You have been quoted extensively around the world as suggesting that if we continue on our current path with regard to carbon emissions, that the human race itself might not be on this planet 73 years from now, if I'm doing my math right, in 2100. Or is it 83 years from now? Do you want to speak to that? Can you please?
Yes. I've been working in this topic of climate change science for the last 43 plus years. And the evidence was accumulating. At least 20 years ago, many climate scientists, including me, knew this is going to get to be a serious problem. And there was just still no action on climate change, mitigating it. So about 5 years ago, I went back to the data I had collected from satellites. In the early 1980s, I teamed up with NASA and launched a climate satellite. Then I collected a lot of observations with aircraft, ships, drones, et cetera, et cetera. So with my students, I went back and looked at the data we have collected for the last 35 years. And I was sort of shocked to see many of the predictions that were made decades ago were all coming true. With one exception, the changes we were seeing in terms of how much Arctic sea ice was melting, and as a result of that, how much additional sunlight it was soaking into the ocean, and how the clouds were retreating. It was clear that we are looking at a much disastrous set of changes than we had anticipated. So we took a factor of all this data into account and looked at what are the worst possibilities. For scientists like me, when we say worst possibility, we are looking at a 5% probability of what could happen. Most of the projections were focusing on the middle range, what's 50% probability. So what we were finding was that there is a 5% chance climate change could become catastrophic, not 50 years from now, not 100 years from now, but 30 to 35 years from now. And so you can ask, how do we define catastrophic? Basically, the changes would be so fast and so large, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to adapt to. And just to give you some idea of what motivated me to call this potentially catastrophic problem, that's about 35 years from now, is the fact that there were studies which have shown if we don't do anything about climate change, by 2050, that's about 33 years, we would expose about 3.5 billion people to what's called deadly heat. Okay, that's if you go out without protection, stay outside, that could cause heat stroke. And there was another study talking about 2.5 billion would be exposed to viruses, vector-borne diseases such as chikungunya, dengue fever, Zika, etc. And then it was talking about a third of the planet becoming dry. So then if we go on, we say, okay, we're going to ignore all these, and then go to what's going to happen beyond 2050. And where, in the 2070 to 2100, that's about 50 to 75 years from now. We're talking about 7 billion people exposed to deadly heat, and about 2/3 of the planet experiencing drought. And then you add in the storms. And the thing which really compelled me to call this an existential threat was the fact that paleontologists and ecologists were suggesting climate change alone could expose 20% of the species to extinction. So we are talking about devastating impacts on human beings, on the ecosystem, on all the species. So we carefully chose the word expose to existential threat. That is different from, causing existential threat itself. It depends on how the society is going to adapt and respond to this. I'm not a social scientist. I personally don't see how we're going to be able to respond or adapt to such unprecedented damages to human beings, to ecosystem. I just want to clarify one point and let you ask questions. Mm-hmm. That when I say worst possible consequence, I'm talking about 5% probability. So many of us tend to think, 5%, that's too small. We don't have to worry about this. See, that's 5% is 1 into 20 odds of a plane falling down. We would never get on that plane with that kind of odds. And my great concern is that we are willing to send our children and grandchildren on that plane.
Yeah, I caught that metaphor in the in the stories on this, and I thought it was a really, really good one. Why is it that your rather dire predictions of this existential threat that we're facing, why is it that they are not congruent with the predictions of the IPCC or the International Panel on Climate, or are they? And I'm missing something.
Well, this 5% probability I'm talking about, they are there in some of the results and data IPCC has shown about 4 years ago. But the focus of the summary documents and policy papers are all on this 50% probability. Okay? And I don't know why they're not focusing on the 5% probability. So I don't want to speculate there.
Yeah. But basically, they're focusing on the mean or the median rather than the rather than the edges, basically, the very best and the very worst outcomes. And when we're talking about the survival of the planet, how can one not, and not speaking specifically of the IPCC, but just in general, you know, the media, the scientific community, how can one not have a serious conversation about the worst possible outcome?
Good question. That's why we did.
Yeah.
We went this route. I thought some of us need to point out, hey, there is also this huge elephant lurking there, and we need to think and worry about that,
right,
and prepare society.
If we were to take this warning seriously, and by we, I'm talking about the governments of the world, and immediately throw everything we had at moving to a decarbonized economy, is that going to be enough to prevent the really dire outcomes that you're seeing?
Yes, absolutely. When you say prevent, that's a very strong word for scientists like me. What we can do is to minimize the probability of happening.
Right.
Okay, we can never say our uncertainty is so large. We can never say that this is going to happen. All we can talk about is improbability. So yes, fortunately, there is time, at least another 10 to 15 years, if we can take drastic actions, and I can give you some ideas. Fortunately and interestingly, the solution is exceedingly simple. All we have to do is to convert all our end uses, our heating of our home, our cooking, the way you move about transport, convert everything to electricity and generate that electricity using wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, bioenergy, and nuclear if you have to. So there are multiples of options here. So the solutions are simple. Of course, it's going to cost. And that is where our study gives you, what do you compare that with? When we are talking about exposing most of the population to existential threat, then the cost of doing these are not that huge.
Yeah, particularly when you're looking at the fate of the human race. I mean, literally, and of course, all other life on Earth. Dr. V. Ramanathan, my apologies if I'm mangling your name, sir.
No problem.
Thank you so much for being with us. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. His work is available all over. The chance of catastrophic climate change completely wiping out humanity by 2010. 2100 is now 1 in 20 is one of the main headlines. We'll be back. Thank you, sir.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls after this. And welcome back. Corky in Hilton, New York. You want to try it again, Corky? Corky, what's wrong with your phone? Corky, I'm going to have to move along and let you call back. For some reason, I'm not hearing a thing here. I don't know what it is. Kenny in Ashland, Ohio. Hey, Kenny, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Would Trump kind of tell us what patriotism is and, how it's supposed to be? For him to have how many deferments from Vietnam
5
after watching Ken Burns' documentary, and then also with him, and I'm giving him the benefit of doubt here, with him possibly having Russian interference in the election, he has no right to tell me what patriotism is. And he's going after John McCain, who I may disagree with some of his politics, but that guy is patriotism. And I find that really, really, really terrible. And you got to remember also with Donald Trump, he went after the NFL years ago when he tried to buy a team. They wouldn't let him. And then he went to the USFL, and then he was part of that bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's been at war with the NFL for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, he has. He absolutely has. Thank you, Kenny. Excellent points all. Denise, watching Free Speech TV in Calumet, Michigan. Hey, Denise, what's on your mind today?
Well, I don't, excuse me, I don't want people to breathe a sigh of relief yet about the health care bill because Paul Rand said no last time right up until he voted yes.
You mean Rand Paul, yeah.
Yeah, Rand Paul. And we need to still, I mean, I've been calling all the people, but Senator Murkowski is still on the edge, but I think she might vote no. Senator Mike Lee from Utah is on the edge. People have got to call these people and pressure them. Murkowski was bullied last time, and now she's being courted. We just can't breathe a sigh of relief till we have a fourth no vote.
Yeah, I agree, or the fifth or the sixth or whatever. I mean, it's got to be. There's got to be a broad realization that this is poison. What this legislation is, and you're right at the last minute. And Rand Paul did change his vote, but beyond that, they are having this meeting. I don't know if the meeting's over or not. It was scheduled for this morning, but I never saw a specific time, so I don't know if it was at 9 or at 11:30. But the Republicans are having a meeting, and the ostensible, the public purpose of the meeting was to decide whether or not to hold a vote on this, Graham Cassidy bill. The reality, in my opinion, is that it was a whip meeting, basically. They were getting everybody in the room, and they were saying, okay, who's going to vote for it, who's going to vote against it, and then whoever says I'm going to vote against it, the next question is, what's it going to take to get your vote? Right. And most of those people in that room probably have a price. And the question is whether Mitch McConnell is willing to pay that price. And frankly, how offensive it might be to the American people. I mean, this huge bribe that they want to give to Alaska, which ironically is that they get to keep Obamacare. I mean, it's like, really?
I know.
So apparently they want to do the same thing with Hawaii because it's not the continental United States, right? So it's not just for Lisa Murkowski. Right. Denise, thank you for the call. I share your concerns, and they're serious and legitimate, and we all need to be calling our senators right now and letting them know what we think. And don't forget your House members, too. Thank you, Denise. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Heather with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving of donations, volunteering, or even spreading the word, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to sustain for more than 20 years. Now, you can give to Free Speech TV through the Branch of Gratitude. This program is a sustainable way to give that reduces waste through paper mailing, postage, and staff hours. By choosing to participate in the Branch of Gratitude, you are joining hands with the socially conscious community and sending a message to the world that Free Speech TV is not only here to stay, it is here to thrive. Please call 877-378-8669 or go online to freespeech.org. Make a difference and join the Branch of Gratitude today.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. This is serious stuff. We're talking, climate change. If it's not addressed, the good news, what Dr. Rahm told us, the good news is that if we decarbonize our energy systems in the next 10 to 15 years worldwide, we can radically reduce this 20, 1 in 20, 5% chance that literally there won't be any humans alive on Earth in 30, 50, 100 years. That's the good news. The bad news, of course, is that our administration is filled with people who are beholden to fossil fuel billionaires. And the fossil fuel billionaires are reaching out around the world and making sure that they have their way. This is not a good thing. not a healthy thing. By the way, the CEO of Equifax, Richard Smith, he's resigning, and they're giving him an $18 million golden parachute. Something seems weird about that. You know, if you worked for me and you really screwed things up and made, you know, all of the information on all of our listeners and viewers, you know, available to hackers and then you know, lied about it for months and months and then sold a bunch of stock and made a big, don't think I'd be giving you a bonus. But it's amazing. But you know, this is life in monopolistic America, and you know, it's very seriously, these are the monopolies, and this is amazing. So you know, we have that. We have the vote, which we were talking about a few minutes ago. We're gonna talk with Dr. Daniel Rothman, by the way, in the next hour, also about climate change. I want to get, you know, we had Peter Wadhams on yesterday. This is an issue that should be at the top of everyone's discussion. Much of the rest of the world is having this conversation. We are not in the United States, in part because our media has been co-opted with advertising dollars from the big fossil fuel companies. And, you know, this is not good for us. It's not good for the world. It is good for the billionaires who make their money on fossil fuels, at least over the short term. And they apparently don't seem to give a damn about whether their grandchildren are even able to survive. And this is pretty grim. Meanwhile, Ryan Zinke, of course, runs the National Park Service. This is the Interior Department. And a few years back in 2011, they put into place a program. They stopped selling bottled water in the stores in the national parks, and instead they put in these units where you could take a reusable bottle and refill it, and then they sold reusable bottles, and this was amazingly successful. It prevented 112,000 pounds of plastic from being sold and discarded every year, along with preventing 140 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions, and stopped 276 cubic yards, or as much as 419 cubic yards. This is from the low to the high end of the scale. 419 cubic yards of landfill was saved. So this was tremendously successful, right? It stopped waste. It stopped expense. People were using recycled water. You know, there was water all over the place, and they even had in the filling stations where you refilled your water bottles, little things that informed you about what was going on in the park. So it was educational and everything. Well, the lobbyists for the bottled water company didn't like it. So the Trump administration said, no, not going to do it. And they just did away with this program that works so well, that saves us money, that saves our environment, in order to bow to the desires of the bottled water industry. It's amazing. Everybody's for sale in this town.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Or at least everybody on the Republican side of the aisle. There's no doubt about that. So yesterday, Paul Krugman, the columnist, the economist and columnist with the New York Times, said something that was, in my opinion, obvious. It's something that I say on the show real frequently. But for the mainstream media, for the New York Times, was shocking. He came right out and said the reason why Republicans have to continuously try to repeal the Obamacare is because they lied to their people about it in the first place. Fox News lied about it. Right-wing hate radio lied about it. The media in general, the corporate media in America, accepted those lies, didn't challenge those lies, didn't point out those lies. They just kind of went along with it. They kept taking their money from the pharmaceutical industry and from the health insurance industries, and they let those lies happen. And Krugman points out that, they lied to us about climate change. They lied to us about the healthcare thing.
And the point that he didn't get around to making, that I'll make, is that there is a reason for these lies. And that is that these lies serve the interests of literally a few thousand, or maybe, at the most 10,000 billionaires and multimillionaires in the United States and the big companies that got them rich. Period. They don't want people to have health care because they would have to pay for parts of it with their taxes. They don't want, they want an eviscerated labor department. They don't want strong unions because they don't want to pay decent wages and benefits. They want to claim that there's no such thing as global warming because they make their money on fossil fuels. They make their money poisoning our planet. They make their money, making paper products, which produces all kinds of effluent and whatnot. They make their money making chemicals and all kinds of things that they don't want regulated. In other words, they don't want us to be protected because it might cost them a little extra. There is a consistent theme through all of this stuff. It's no secret. It's no surprise. But you're not going to hear about it anywhere except here on Free Speech TV. Seriously, think about it. Outside of Paul Krugman's column in the New York Times yesterday, I haven't heard this kind of language in a long, long time. It's not just, people say, oh, the Republican bill is terrible. No, it's a lie. Oh, the Republic, there's these tax reform, blah, blah. They are lying. Somebody needs to say that. And I do. And other people, other hosts on this network do. We call out the truth. And I think it's, therefore, super worth supporting. 877-378-8669. Call us now, please, and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network. We still haven't hit a $10,000 a day. Yesterday, we were right around, I think around 7, as I recall. So please, we really need to start hitting our goals. So, of course, there are premiums if you make gifts of a certain level, but you can make a gift of any amount. If there are lots of people watching, and a very small fraction of 1% ever call in and help out, and that's kind of a tragedy, because we're all benefiting from this, right? As a country, we benefit from Free Speech TV, from having progressive dialogue and discourse. So, but anyhow, back to the goodies. With an $80 contribution, there's the Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp, the one from Ben Cohen's group. With a $120 gift, you get the water bottle and the anti-pharma stamp, plus the book Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. That's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get the Law and Vengeance book by Papantonio, and you get Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, where he went over to Germany and talked to average Germans in the 50s. And this book is astonishing. With a $360 gift, you get the anti-pharma stamp and the free speech water bottle and Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio and They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and my book, Unequal Protection, an autographed copy of Unequal Protection. And for a $480 gift, excuse me, you get the Free Speech TV water bottle anti-pharma stamp, Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and Unequal Protection by me, plus, with the $480 gift, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book, about what has happened to our democratic republic as a consequence of billionaire money, frankly. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland or wherever I happen to be. We'll work it out, and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a meal together. Be nice to meet you. But the bottom line is that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the electrons flowing. We need to keep the lights on. We need to get the bills paid. And the only way we can do this is by coming to you and asking you to please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And the issues we care about are at HartmannReport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation.
And Hartmann Report's also a free podcast over at iTunes every single day, or at least Monday through Friday. Welcome back. The Daily Mail, which is a tabloid newspaper in the UK. In fact, I think it might be owned by Rupert Murdoch. I'm pretty sure. In any case, they ran an article back in February that was filled with lies. I don't know how to say it, or shall we say misinformation. They basically took. There had been this study that said that there was no, or there had been an assertion from the climate deniers that there had been a pause in global warming during the 80s or 90s or whenever it was. And there was no pause. There was a statistical anomaly that had to do with Earth measurements versus satellite measurements and whatnot. But there was no pause. But they wrote this article with a headline saying that, world leaders were duped into investing billions to stop climate change, right? Because of this, because what they said was a flawed study, only they presented it as a flawed study. Now, here in the United States, this would just be standard operating procedure. In fact, this story, which contained fake information, I mean, this is the essence of fake news. To say, there's no such thing as climate change, or there was a pause in global warming that proves this is not the human-caused climate change, that proves that it's some, external event, it's sunspots, something like that. This story, which told those lies, was picked up by Breitbart, Fox News, Drudge Report, Rush Limbaugh, The Daily Caller, The Washington Times, and others, whereas a bunch of other publications debunked it, like The Guardian and Ars Technica and Science Insider and Real Climate. But it didn't just go there. It got all the way to Lamar Smith, who is the chairman of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. He was quoting this paper, which is filled with lies about climate change. And in fact, he said to the people who were at the congressional hearings right after the paper was released, he said, "This may be more serious than you think." Well, turns out it's not. It's just a lie. But the interesting part about this that I haven't gotten to yet, that I wanted to tell you about, the interesting part about this is that in the UK, there is an agency. It's called the Independent Press Standards Organization, IPSO, Independent Press Standards Organization. And that organization looks at what is being reported in the press, and if somebody intentionally or overtly or explicitly puts out fake news, IPSO calls them out on it and can even require them to publish a retraction and an apology. And IPSO called them out on this. This is the news today. I mean, this happened back in February, but IPSO finally said, you got to do this. You can't let people believe this is true. And what I find fascinating about this is that we have no parallel agency in the United States. The FCC used to play this role up until 1987 when Ronald Reagan stopped the FCC from enforcing the Fairness Doctrine, which at a certain level required that news be news. The phrase was programming in the public interest, but everybody understood what it meant. That news was news. And since 87, we have not had that. But what have we had? We've had the rise of right-wing fake news. Virtually every talk radio station in the country is filled with right-wingers who on a daily basis spread lies and misinformation. You've got media across the country, including here in Washington, D.C. It's free and given away. Right-wing media being promoted all over the place. You've got Sinclair Broadcasting trying, the rules, the Trump administration is bending the rules so that they can reach 72% of American households.
You've got, Time Warner wanting to merge with CNN. You've got Comcast owning MSNBC. You've got, all this stuff. And yet there's no regulation of any of it that is meaningful in the United States. I am hopeful that if anything comes out of this whole, did Russia manipulate our elections, or did they insert phony news in Facebook or whatever? I am hopeful that what comes out of this is that we reconsider the fairness doctrine, that we reconsider having something like IPSO, some sort of a regulatory structure that doesn't say, this is right or that is wrong. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment, but that does say you have to present. There has to be some element of truth to what you're saying, and if not, you have to own up to it. Not sure exactly how to do that. I thought the Fairness Doctrine did a good job of it. The Brits would tell you, I think, that IPSO does, but although it takes time. But anyhow, to your calls, Roger in Yorkville, Illinois. Hey, Roger, what is on your mind today?
Yeah, hi.
Hey, what's up?
The reason I'm calling is I think we need to put a label on Trump the way he does with everybody he disagrees with. Like Trump says that Hillary is crooked Hillary, and during the primaries, of course, it was low-energy Jeb and little Marco. And, Trump is a liar, and basically he's conned everybody into voting for him for president, the people that did vote for him, because he's basically lied about everything that he was going to do. So every time that I mention Trump, whether I'm posting anything on Facebook or talking to people, it's con man Trump, because that's exactly what he is. He's
or Don the Con. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Don the con man. And I think if we got everybody just put con man in the same sentence with Trump, it would give him some of his own medicine back.
Yeah. I think it's happening in larger and it's spreading more rapidly than frankly I would have expected. I really believe the American people are awakening to what's going on. Outside of those rural areas where the only news that they can get without paying a premium for MSNBC, the only news that they can get basically is CNN or Sinclair Broadcasting, and all their local radio stations are broadcasting 24/7 right-wing talking points. And he's going to continue to do well in those places because they are supporting him, because he's supporting, the whole right-wing infrastructure. But other than that, yeah, I'm with you. Roger, thank you for the call. Gary in Minneapolis. Hey, Gary, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was over there from 65 to 68. Mm-hmm. And I've been watching this Ken Burns Vietnam history. Fantastic production. But something I never hear much conversation about is the draft. Mm-hmm. And these guys play a long game. And I think eliminating the draft was part of the strategy of advancing war all over the damn world.
I agree. It helped them create a mercenary army, basically.
Exactly. And all you have in there now are people that are in there because they can't get a job.
Well, not exclusively. I mean, there are people in the military who are there because, it's the tradition of their family, because they love their country, because they want to be of service, and we need to honor those folks. But it's a tragedy.
Have always been there.
Yeah, but it's an absolute tragedy. Thomas Jefferson wrote, when he was talking about the military, he wrote a letter to, I think it was Spencer Roane, back in the would have been the late 1700s, in which he said, "I hope I shall never see the day when the young men of my country are willing to be shot at for a sixpence." And in other words, he completely was opposed to the idea of a mercenary military, and he felt that we needed to make sure that our military is taking care of our people.
And just like what we need is a cross section of Americans in the service.
Yes.
We need.
Charlie Rangel and I have talked about this every year that I've done this show. Every year he comes on the show once a year, and it's been maybe 2 years since we've talked, but I agree, and I think that it should be a year of public service. It could be either military or non-military. If you're not inclined, volunteer in a hospital, something like that. But get out of the house, see the country, spend a year, and in exchange for that, you get a free college education or free trade school.
Yeah. And that way I don't think we would have been in Iraq if we would have had a draft.
Oh, I agree. I don't think Vietnam would have ended if we had done away with the draft, or if there had never been a draft.
The draft ended after Vietnam was over, though.
I know, but my point is that the pressure to end Vietnam came from people being drafted, and from the families of draftees
and their friends and relatives.
Right, exactly.
Protesting out in the streets.
Right, and that's not happening now because now people are volunteering to be in the military, and their families sort of have this. Well, you have to say, well, okay, my country, right or wrong, okay, we're going to go along with Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever. So there's not protest over our being lied into a war. What happened in Iraq is just as egregious, in my opinion, as what happened with the Gulf of Tonkin and in Vietnam. Gary, thank you for the call. It's a tough topic. I was really glad to hear that Ken Burns actually went there about Nixon's treason. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls, and we're also going to check in with Talk Media News today and find out what's going on in the world. And welcome back. Adam, watching us on YouTube in New Orleans. Hey, Adam, what's up?
Hi there, Tom.
Hey, Adam.
I'm a progressive realist, and I guess to change the world, you have to acknowledge the world as it is. And Alinsky, I read that in his book. I agree with it. Since the 70s, as you pointed out, policies and laws have been enacted to transfer wealth from people to the oligarchs and plutocrats. That's reality. I'm minded of the leveraged buyouts in the 90s when raiders came into overvalued companies, seized and sold off the assets for profit, literally oblivious to the human devastation they created.
Yep.
And
actually, in cheering the human devastation, Chainsaw Al Dunlop, remember that guy? He fired 10,000 people at Sunbeam and bragged about it.
Oh, and on Fortune magazine, their cover, Nabisco shredded workers.
Yep.
My comment is about the contrast between the contributions I make to foster political and social change, as an example, Free Speech TV, Wolfpack, the organizations and politicians that embody, I guess, my beliefs, and what I think I need to do on behalf of my family, what I think most Americans need to do in order to literally prevent their assets from being taken. If you look at investing, people should not, generally speaking, fight trends, should not do things that are contrary to what the insiders are doing. And the insiders are investing in the fossil fuels, in the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex, all the things that are terrible, I believe, for the United States and the world.
Yeah, although, Adam, let me give you a
way. How do you survive the years?
Well, there's a caveat to that. The stock prices of those companies are going up, but those companies are also very profitable right now, and to a large extent, their investors, their senior executives are having the company use part of its profits to buy back stock, which increases the price of the stock because it decreases the number of shares. And I haven't seen anybody do a really, really good and thorough analysis of this, but I would guess that since 2000 anyway, probably at the low end 10%, at the high end maybe as much as 40 or 50% of the increase in value or price anyway of stock in the U.S.
stock exchanges is the result of basically corporations manipulating their own stock price to increase the compensation to their senior executives. It's massive. It's huge.
They've been doing that now for decades.
Well, yeah, Reagan legalized it in the 80s, but they turned it into an art form in the 2000s. It really, really, really got there. And now, I mean, when George W. Bush, the big one was in 2000, I think it was 2005, I could be wrong, it might have been 2003, but it was when George W. Bush did his giant tax cuts, and part of that was that he allowed companies that had money overseas to bring that money back to the United States at a 5% tax. And it was something like $100 billion came back to the United States. Virtually all of it, over 90% of that money was used for share buybacks. None of it was used to build factories. None of it was used for jobs. All of it was used to make stockholders richer and richer and richer, particularly the senior executives who are sitting on all these stock options. So, I mean, that's a reality that we need to challenge, and it's one that's easily changed by changing the tax code, undoing the damage that Reagan did. Adam, excellent points all. Thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us, Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So what's going on in the world today? Did the Republicans have their meeting, and did they decide whether or not to hold a vote?
On healthcare, we haven't gotten any word about that quite yet. But based on Lindsey Graham did a town hall with Bernie Sanders last night, and based on I think the comments he made there, I think unlike previous attempts, at least Lindsey Graham seems completely out for letting this thing have a vote, even though it looks like it will probably be doomed. I mean, typically, if the Republican Party or I guess any party doesn't think they have the votes, they won't even bring it up to the vote. But it does seem as if perhaps this one will get a final, will get a chance to be voted on. Although, there's no real, barring some miracle, there's no real reason to think that that this is going to be any more successful than attempts past. The sort of 2.0 version of Graham Cassidy has not, there's no sign that it's won over John McCain or Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins or even Rand Paul. I mean, there's really no sign that momentum's moving in the right direction of that. Right. I mean, what's interesting about it, this is kind of one of these more speculative pieces, but there's a piece in Politico today that has some kind of fairly juicy quotes from some Senate Republicans talking about how, despite this September 30th deadline in which they can use the 50 vote threshold, that some GOP senators are saying that this isn't going to end after.
Well, a deadline resets on January 1st.
Right. I think there's some thought that after September 30th, they can still try, at least in the course of this calendar year, to use essentially use the budget reconciliation process by looping in health care and tax reform in the fiscal 2018 budget resolution.
Sure.
Using fast-track procedural powers and things like that. I mean, it's sort of, there's a couple of GOP senators who say that they still want to get this thing done, hence that Politico article. But it's just couple of things. Number one, as you know, there's really zero momentum at this point to get these things done.
Well, with one single exception. And there was a piece in the Hill about this. There was, I believe, a piece in the New York Times about this. And that is that apparently the Koch network and several other, and apparently some very, very large, billionaire donors to the Republican Party from Texas have basically informed the Republicans in Congress, you will be getting no more of our money if you do not cut our taxes. And starting with that 3.8% tax on capital gains that is funding Obamacare, and then next, we want our other tax cut as well. We want another $5 trillion from you guys. And so this is, according to what I've read, the reason why they actually want to hold a vote, even though they're going to lose the vote, is by way of saying, so each one of those senators who votes yes for this will be essentially saying to the billionaires, hey, I did my best. I'm on your side. Please, kick a couple $1 million into my reelection campaign. I need the money, whatever. That's really what's going on. That this is all about a couple of hundred billionaires who don't want to be paying taxes so that the rest of us can have health insurance.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And I was just, I was going to say, in terms of where the momentum is, it is, I think, from a very small percentage of large donors and business people. And then, obviously, from Trump himself a little bit, having campaigned on this particular issue. But I think to your point, I think one of the reasons why I do think they might put this up for a vote, even knowing that it will fail, is that if they don't, it's sort of it continues to linger here in the Capitol. I mean, sort of what I was saying earlier. It sort of provides this opportunity to later in the year try to take another swing at the bat. But the problem with doing it in the way we described as a budget reconciliation process is that you have to tie it together with tax reform. And as you said, the Republican Party, either politically or financially or whatever, however you want to look at it, they can't afford to lose on tax reform. And on top of that, they don't think they will. Trump even held the dinner last night in the White House, and from all the reports coming out of there was, just gleeful with the prospects of tax reform and how bullish he was going to be on it, and how they're going to get this tax cut, and how he thinks he'll be able to get that 15% corporate tax cut, which is virtually impossible. But so if they lump healthcare in there, this golden goose of theirs in the form of tax reform becomes really, really much more difficult, and it would just be incredibly risky to try to tie the two of them together, considering the fact that, don't get me wrong, tax reform is going to be incredibly hard.
But it's exactly what the billionaires want.
Yeah, it is. That's for sure.
So therefore, it'll happen. The vast majority of the American people, they want Social Security to be strengthened. They want the benefits to be increased. They want the retirement age to be lowered. Now, that ain't going to happen. The vast majority of the American people want, a national health care system of some sort. Even Republicans now are over 50% believe that we should have universal health coverage. That ain't going to happen. It's what the donor class wants. That's it. Anyhow, what else is going on in the world, Patrick?
Well, just going to quickly on the tax reform outlook. The real struggle, I think, for Republicans when they really start to focus in on that is that they actually have too many tax cuts that they want. They only have about $1.5 trillion that they can really mess around with in terms of the budget. But their wish list, when you add it all up, comes out to about more than $5 trillion. Trump's 15% corporate tax rate isn't going to help that.
Right.
That's certainly going to help swell the budget, the deficit in that regard. But the real debate is going to be whether or not the Republican Party can learn their lessons from their healthcare failures, which is that they were never really on the same page with at least the vast majority of their own party. Certainly the American people, certainly the Republican base.
Unless they've already learned the lesson, and the lesson is simply when the Koch brothers yell jump, you just simply ask how high and you do it, regardless of the political consequences. Because when the election comes, they'll throw enough money at you that they'll destroy your opponent.
Yeah, and the question is just like which of these tax cuts will sort of get greenlit. They can't do everything they want. So is it just the ones recommended by the Koch brothers, or is it more geared towards the lower and middle class? That obviously is how I think the Republicans will sell it, is that this is a lower and middle income tax.
Well, just like George Bush, he threw $200 or $300 in there. Oddly enough, it was Bernie Sanders' recommendation, but he did that, and that sort of got the bottom half of America economically got their vote. And then I remember when the check came, there was this whole letter along with it saying, George W. Bush got you this tax cut. I thought, oh, geez, do I really want? Anyway, Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News. Thank you, Patrick.
Take care.
Great talking with you. We'll be back. Stick around. We're gonna talk with Professor Daniel Rothman, professor of geophysics at MIT. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
From New York, this is your
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
So yesterday, Paul Krugman, the columnist, the economist and columnist with the New York Times, said something that was, in my opinion, obvious. It's something that I say on the show real frequently. But for the mainstream media, for the New York Times, was shocking. He came right out and said the reason why Republicans have to continuously try to repeal the Obamacare is because they lied to their people about it in the first place. Fox News lied about it. Right-wing hate radio lied about it. The media in general, the corporate media in America, accepted those lies, didn't challenge those lies, didn't point out those lies. They just kind of went along with it. They kept taking their money from the pharmaceutical industry and from the health insurance industries, and they let those lies happen. And Krugman points out that, they lied to us about climate change. They lied to us about the healthcare thing. And the point that he didn't get around to making, that I'll make, is that there is a reason for these lies. And that is that these lies serve the interests of literally a few thousand, or maybe, at the most 10,000 billionaires and multimillionaires in the United States and the big companies that got them rich. Period. They don't want people to have health care because they would have to pay for parts of it with their taxes. They don't want, they want an eviscerated labor department. They don't want strong unions because they don't want to pay decent wages and benefits. They want to claim that there's no such thing as global warming because they make their money on fossil fuels. They make their money poisoning our planet. They make their money, making paper products, which produces all kinds of effluent and whatnot. They make their money making chemicals and all kinds of things that they don't want regulated. In other words, they don't want us to be protected because it might cost them a little extra. There is a consistent theme through all of this stuff. It's no secret. It's no surprise. But you're not going to hear about it anywhere except here on Free Speech TV. Seriously, think about it. Outside of Paul Krugman's column in the New York Times yesterday, I haven't heard this kind of language in a long, long time. It's not just, people say, oh, the Republican bill is terrible. No, it's a lie. Oh, the Republic, there's these tax reform, blah, blah. They are lying. Somebody needs to say that. And I do. And other people, other hosts on this network do. We call out the truth. And I think it's, therefore, super worth supporting. 877-378-8669. Call us now, please, and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network. We still haven't hit a $10,000 a day. Yesterday, we were right around, I think around 7, as I recall. So please, we really need to start hitting our goals. So, of course, there are premiums if you make gifts of a certain level, but you can make a gift of any amount. If there are lots of people watching, and a very small fraction of 1% ever call in and help out, and that's kind of a tragedy, because we're all benefiting from this, right? As a country, we benefit from Free Speech TV, from having progressive dialogue and discourse. So, but anyhow, back to the goodies. With an $80 contribution, there's the Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp, the one from Ben Cohen's group. With a $120 gift, you get the water bottle and the anti-pharma stamp, plus the book Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. That's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get the Law and Vengeance book by Papantonio, and you get Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free. where he went over to Germany and talked to average Germans in the 50s. And what this book is astonishing. With a $360 gift, you get the anti-pharma stamp and the free speech water bottle and Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, and They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and my book, Unequal Protection, an autographed copy of Unequal Protection. And for a $480 gift, excuse me, you get the Free Speech TV water bottle and anti-pharma stamp, Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and Unequal Protection by me, plus, with the $480 gift, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book, about what has happened to our democratic republic as a consequence of billionaire money, frankly. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland or wherever I happen to be. We'll work it out, and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a meal together. Be nice to meet you. But the bottom line is that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the electrons flowing. We need to keep the lights on. We need to get the bills paid. And the only way we can do this is by coming to you and asking you to please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Very pleased to have with us Professor Daniel Rothman, Professor of Geophysics at the Department of Earth, Atmospheric, and Planetary Sciences at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. The website science.mit.edu. You can tweet at ScienceMIT. Professor, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being with us. We were just talking with Dr. Ramanathan of Scripps, and he was talking about the possibility of human extinction or certainly destruction of civilization. You've done some math on this that you've been quoted rather extensively. Tell us what your understanding is of the situation right now with regard to climate change and the direction that we're moving.
So I suppose you're referring to the paper I published in Science Advances last week.
Yes.
And in that paper, I didn't address global warming head on so much as the consequences of putting CO2 into the atmosphere. And it's more specifically, eventually that CO2 goes into the oceans. And I addressed the consequences of the CO2 into the oceans, and I did it in a way that I think it'd be fair to say is indirect. Basically, I studied the record of ancient events in the carbon cycle, that is, past disruptions of the carbon cycle, and the carbon cycle being a loop between photosynthesis, which takes CO2 out of the atmosphere and oceans, and respiration, which is what we do, which brings it back when we consume the organic matter made by CO2. And in studying the past events, I basically considered two types of events. One, those that are associated with mass extinctions, and the other, those which were not. And so the issue is that every time there's been a mass extinction in the last 540 million years, there's been a clear disruption, a very serious disruption of the carbon cycle. On the other hand, there are also many serious disruptions of the carbon cycle in which there's been no mass extinction. So I tried to address the difference between these two and to see if one can conclude.
You're talking about things like the PETM?
Oh, so you're au courant, as they say, right? You seem to know.
Well, that some would argue that was an extinction event. It just wasn't a mass extinction event. It was a minor extinction event.
So the PETM, for your listeners, the Paleocene Eocene thermal maximum, an event about 55 million years ago, is associated with the extinction of some benthic foraminifera, but not widespread mass extinction. And that's one of the conundrums, because the PETM is one of the most well-studied events in the geologic record. There's a clear disruption, clear signs of warming, clear signs of ocean acidification, but not much of a biotic impact. And so the question is, what sets these apart?
And what does?
What I found is that I basically began with a hypothesis. And the hypothesis, part of it will sound familiar, and that's the idea that the rate at which CO2 levels increase matters. Right, and so one thinks that it's natural to imagine that the faster you pump CO2 into the atmosphere and or the oceans, the more dangerous it is for for ecosystems. And so that's basically saying rates matter. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, I started thinking, well, what happens if it happens really fast? Like, what happens if it happens now during the radio show? All right, and then you raise CO2 levels, say only 1 part per million, 1/400th of their present level. Well, you and I will leave our rooms, eventually go outside, and if it went up 1 ppm, we wouldn't notice anything. However, the rate at which it happened would have been infinite. Right, and so therefore, it had to be a little bit more richer than just rates, because the idea of there being a critical rate applies to timescales that are sufficiently long. And when the timescales, on the other hand, are sufficiently short, like instantaneous, then it becomes a matter of how much. So it's like how much or how fast, right? And I found a way of connecting the two, and I connect how much to how fast via the timescale that separates fast from slow. And this allowed me to predict how much, also by studying the data, but allowed me to predict from the study of the ancient events, which are slower, it allowed me to predict how much of a change today would bring us into this zone where in the past it would be associated with mass extinction.
Okay.
And so the answer to how much is a number. It's about 310 gigatons of carbon, which, following basically every projection that's been made, is a number that will reach sometime this century, and that's 300 gigatons going into the ocean. We put it into the atmosphere, and then some of it gets absorbed.
Haven't we put, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, something on the order of 500 gigatons? Of carbon into the
I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's got a fact. I don't remember the number.
So,
you're right. It's more than the 300. However, a lot stays in the ocean. A lot stays in the atmosphere. Right. A lot gets taken up by land. And I'm specifically referring to how much is absorbed in the ocean.
I see.
And the reason I'm doing that is for a number of reasons. First of all, the study really only addresses things that happen, I would say, at time scales of 100 to 1,000 years at the fastest, because it implicitly assumes an equilibration between the atmosphere and oceans. And secondly, all of the data for mass extinction that exists in the geologic record, or most of it, let's just say the highest quality data, exists from marine life. And so,
and it seems usually mass extinctions started in the oceans, do they not?
I think in certain cases it's unclear, and you can take the case of the famous KT or Cretaceous Tertiary extinction that killed the dinosaurs. If following the standard view now that it was a bolide impact, then you would think something started in the atmosphere.
Right, but the Permian, the most severe part, the beginning of the most severe part of it began in the ocean, as I recall. But,
well,
or maybe we're not sure.
I don't think we know enough to say that for any extinction with any authority. The real issue is that the best data comes from the oceans because it's reasonably homogeneous.
And also sedimentary rock and all that, you simply have a whole lot more material to look at.
Right, that. And there's one other element here. My study is is based on what we call the carbon isotopic records, the isotopic composition of carbon buried in the sedimentary rock you just referred to.
Right.
And that isotopic composition is really only reliable as an indicator of the atmosphere and oceans when it comes from marine sediments.
Okay. So to get, we just have a couple minutes left here. We're talking with Professor Daniel Rothman of MIT. What specifically do people need to know about what you learned, and what can we do with that information?
So I'd say there are many things that have been learned, but insofar as the case of the sixth extinction that you were alluding to earlier, the point is that the results of my study suggest that the emissions that we're putting into the atmosphere sometime during the current century would be sufficient to, so to speak, launch a major extinction event. And by launch, what I mean is put the Earth system, that is the atmosphere, the oceans, and the life that it supports, on a trajectory which, if left unchecked over a period of about 10,000 years, would engage in an unstable trajectory so that it would lead to an extinction event, which would basically start, sometime in the near future and continue and reach its worst level, far into the future. So if you wish, the take-home message is that there are other things that are unhealthy to the planet about putting CO2 in the atmosphere besides global warming. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we're basically talking about ocean acidification.
Right, killing off the ocean.
And the contribution of my study is to basically say how much is too much.
Right, and when you say a mass extinction, are you talking an extinction that would include top predators like you and me, humans?
I hesitate to go that far. The study basically addresses the data for marine invertebrates, that is organisms with shells. The shells have these organisms have a hard time making their shells when the oceans become acidic. Right. One could imagine that things become bad all around, but that the study doesn't really identify mechanisms. It's basically putting the data together, trying to make this connection between the past and the future.
And you're more or less suggesting that we have a carbon budget of around 300 gigatons of carbon that we can emit before it.
No, 300 gigatons that we can allow to go into the oceans. But
into the oceans, okay.
About twice as much gets emitted compared to how much is in the near term.
Any sense of how many years that gives us until we have to really decarbonize our economy?
Well, I mean, it depends on how things develop, but the paper basically says as a round number, that this threshold would be crossed sometime this century, the latter half of this century. I mean, nothing terrible happens the next day. I mean, it's just saying that this is when we end up on this trajectory, and so the obvious way to not get there, or the obvious way to retract it back once you get there, is to not put as much CO2 into it.
Right, because the only way to know that you're actually in an extinction event is in retrospect, it seems, right? I mean,
of course.
Or at least in the early stages of one. Brilliant stuff. Professor Daniel Rothman, thank you so much for dropping by, for doing this work and getting it out there. I really appreciate you being with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Great talking with you. Professor Daniel Rothman of MIT. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back. Let's see here. Gary watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV in Suisun City, California. Am I saying that right, Gary?
Suisun City, California.
Say it again?
Suisun.
Suisun. Okay, great. So what's up, Gary?
Well, you were talking earlier you needed a third leg for the Republican law. I think it is misinformation.
Right. Fake news.
Okay? It has to, even when, Fox is the perfect example.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And you were talking earlier about the economy. Well, I kind of like to change the zeitgeist, I guess. I would like to make the word billionaire an obscene word.
Okay, I think it's moving in that direction. I mean, there was a time in America, in the 1930s when, great way, for that matter, in the late 1890s, during the Gilded Age and during the Roaring 20s, when it was apparent to average Americans that the very, very wealthy were basically parasites on our society, not job creators and wonderful people.
Right, and that needs to be the zeitgeist again.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that is going to happen simply as a consequence of the kinds of damage that they're doing right now to our democracy by owning the entire Republican Party and chunks of the Democratic Party, and the damage that they're doing to our planet. I mean, the stuff that we've just been talking about, literally. We're talking human extinction. We're talking about the end of civilization. These are serious things. And then you got Lamar Smith running the Science Committee in the House of Representatives, saying, there ain't no such thing, nothing to worry about. It's all good. It's crazy. It's just crazy. Gary, thanks for the call. Pat in Seattle. Hey, Pat, what's up?
Hi, Tom. My question is about the Coke Buddy Network that you have talked about that's in all 50 states. Can these places, these offices be identified? Is there any plan to picket them or expose them by any organizations? Do you know?
The big organization that the Kochs support, and not just them, by the way, that in fact was co-founded by Paul Weyrich, is ALEC. And they write legislation for state legislatures. Now there is this state-by-state network that also they're supporting within states rather than nationally. ALEC is national. They're not hiding this stuff, Pat. They brag about it. They invite people to it. They've got their Young Republican events. They're buying professors in colleges. They're right up front about it. What's so amazing is that our media has been absolutely unwilling to cover any of it. And here we have, basically the takeover of the media and the government by oligarchs here in the United States. And there is no mention of oligarchs here in the United States in the media or frankly in our government. People sit around going, why can't things get done in government? I heard this conversation on MSNBC this morning. Well, why can't things get done? I don't know why things can't. It was some Republicans saying this. Well, we all know why things can't get done. The billionaires want you to do things that the people hate. And so when you try and do them, you get all kinds of blowback. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Pat, thanks for the call. Fox newshounds.us, I think. Let me just check this. It is, newshounds.us is great on Fox. And also MediaMatters.org, Media Matters for America, great on what's going on with some of these groups. But there needs to be a central clearing. We'll be back.
Hi there, I'm Marie with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving donations, volunteering, or spreading the word about Free Speech TV, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to exist. And for that, I want to say thank you. Now you can give to the network powered by the people by donating an unwanted or used vehicle through our Vehicles of Change program. If you have an old car, RV, or even a motorcycle, Free Speech TV can use it to grow and thrive. You can make a bigger difference in supporting Free Speech TV by giving an old car. It's a great way to support the network without having to dig into your bank account. Just call 877-378-8669 and ask for more information about Vehicles of Change. Again, the number to call is 877-378-8669. If it has a VIN, we'll take it in. Thank you.
Here with you. Ryan Zinke is complaining that 1/3 of the Interior Department are not loyal to the flag. In other words, they're not loyal to the billionaires who own Ryan Zinke, who want to mine and frack and, all that sort of stuff. This guy is so toxic. He's taken over a 70,000 employee department, and he said, you know, the direction has to be clear. You got to hold people accountable. He says, I got 30% of the crew that's not loyal to the flag. Right. And then at the very end, he says, fracking is proof that God's got a good sense of humor and he loves us. He wants to open up more permits for oil drilling, logging, and other energy developments. Zinke says, the president wants it yesterday. We have to do it by the law. Right. This is not a good thing. Graham Cassidy. Dana Milbank wrote a really nice piece for the Washington Post this morning titled, Cassidy is sorry about this Cassidy-Graham process. He should be. For Monday's hearing, Dana Milbank writes on the Cassidy-Graham bill to repeal Obamacare, the one and only scheduled meeting. He points out, as I did earlier in the program, only 5 people were allowed to watch the meeting, right? And 3 of them were apparently lobbyists. According to Dana Milbank, he said the cops had allowed only 5 spectators to remain in the room, and 3 of them looked like lobbyists. That's right, 5 members of the public allowed to witness the lone hearing for a plan that would cut more than $1 trillion from health care, deny health insurance to millions, and dump the whole health care mess on ill-equipped states. Yeah, that's what the Republicans are up to. And they complain about Obamacare? Really? As I mentioned, Paul Krugman was talking about how the Republicans have been trapped by their own lies. This is the piece that was published yesterday in the New York Times. Trapped by Their Own Lies is the title. He says Republicans have spent years routinely lying for the sake of political advantage. Of course, I've been telling you this for 14 years now. And now, not just on health care, but across the board, they're trapped by their own lies, writes Paul Krugman, forced into trying to enact policies that they know don't work. And then, you know, he talks about how Carl Hulse wrote this piece for the New York Times. I've been talking about this all day, how one of the, well, to quote Paul, to Krugman, quote, one big factor behind the push for Graham Cassidy was anger among big donors who wanted to know why Republicans had broken their vows to kill Obamacare. What the big donors, they're not going to? Oh, interesting. The Hill, Troy tells me The Hill is reporting that they're not going to vote on Graham Cassidy. That's interesting. So they're making the equation. They have come to the conclusion that this thing is more dangerous to their reelection chances than being on record in favor of it. So they're more afraid of the people than of the billionaire donors. Or they think that they can get the billionaire donors to go along with them with a plan B. I'm putting my money on the second, actually. So Krugman points out, not only did the Republicans promise to repeal Obamacare, but Trump specifically promised to replace it with something that was better, more comprehensive, and less expensive. Now, there's only one thing that qualifies for all those, or there's a few variations on it, but basically it's single-payer health care or socialized medicine. I mean, your choice, right? So then, of course, you know, you've got the Republican agenda is taxes. Are they going to talk about how the Bush tax cuts hurt the economy? Are they going to talk about how the Reagan tax cuts hurt the economy? Are they going to talk about how Sam Brownback ruined Kansas with tax cuts? Somehow I doubt it. Anyhow, pick up your calls and your thoughts after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Coming up on 28 minutes past the hour, we'll be back with your calls, my thoughts, and more of the news of the day right after this. So yesterday, Paul Krugman, you know, the columnist, the economist and columnist with the New York Times, said something that was, in my opinion, obvious. It's something that I say on this show real frequently. But for the mainstream media, for the New York Times, was shocking. He came right out and said the reason why Republicans have to continuously try to repeal the Obamacare is because they lied to their people about it in the first place. Fox News lied about it. Right-wing hate radio lied about it. The media in general, the corporate media in America,
accepted those lies, didn't challenge those lies, didn't point out those lies. They just kind of went along with it. They kept taking their money from the pharmaceutical industry and from the health insurance industries, and just, they let those lies happen. And Krugman points out that, they lied to us about climate change. They lied to us about the healthcare thing. And the point that he didn't get around to making, that I'll make, is that there is a reason for these lies. And that is that these lies serve the interests of literally a few thousand, or maybe, at the most 10,000 billionaires and multimillionaires in the United States and the big companies that got them rich. Period. They don't want people to have health care because they would have to pay for parts of it with their taxes. They don't want, they want an eviscerated labor department. They don't want strong unions because they don't want to pay decent wages and benefits. They want to claim that there's no such thing as global warming because they make their money on fossil fuels. They make their money poisoning our planet. They make their money, making paper products, which produces all kinds of effluent and whatnot. They make their money making chemicals and all kinds of things that they don't want regulated. In other words, they don't want us to be protected because it might cost them a little extra. There is a consistent theme through all of this stuff. It's no secret. It's no surprise. But you're not going to hear about it anywhere except here on Free Speech TV. Seriously, think about it. Outside of Paul Krugman's column in the New York Times yesterday, I haven't heard this kind of language in a long, long time. It's not just, people say, oh, the Republican bill is terrible. No, it's a lie. Oh, the Republic, there's these tax reform, blah, blah, blah. They are lying. Somebody needs to say that. And I do. And other people, other hosts on this network do. We call out the truth. And I think it's, therefore, super worth supporting. 877-378-8669. Call us now, please, and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network. We still haven't hit a $10,000 a day. Yesterday, we were right around, I think around 7, as I recall. So please, we really need to start hitting our goals. So, of course, there are premiums if you make gifts of a certain level, but you can make a gift of any amount. If there are lots of people watching, and a very small fraction of 1% ever call in and help out, and that's kind of a tragedy, because we're all benefiting from this, right? As a country, we benefit from Free Speech TV, from having progressive dialogue and discourse. So, but anyhow, back to the goodies. With an $80 contribution, there's the Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp, the one from Ben Cohen's group. With a $120 gift, you get the water bottle and the anti-pharma stamp, plus the book Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. That's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get the Law and Vengeance book by Papantonio, and you get Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, where he went over to Germany and talked to average Germans in the 50s. And this book is astonishing. With a $360 gift, you get the anti-pharma stamp and the free speech water bottle and Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, and They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and my book, Unequal Protection, an autographed copy of Unequal Protection. And for a $480 gift, excuse me, you get the Free Speech TV water bottle and anti-pharma stamp, Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio, They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and Unequal Protection by me, plus, with the $480 gift, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book, about what has happened to our democratic republic as a consequence of billionaire money, frankly. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland or wherever I happen to be. We'll work it out, and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a meal together. Be nice to meet you. But the bottom line is that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the electrons flowing. We need to keep the lights on. We need to keep get the bills paid. And the only way we can do this is by coming to you and asking you to please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Senate Republicans have pulled Graham Cassidy. There will not be a vote on it. They're going to be...
The mic is pretty loud. Oh, it really is. Mute that for a moment.
Is that better? Much better. Okay, my microphone fell off. Sorry about that. Graham Cassidy is dead for the moment, but, you know, they've got to figure out a way, these Republicans, they've got to figure out a way to give the tax cut to the billionaires who fund them. And those billionaires are very upset that they're having to pay an extra 3.8% taxes on capital gains, even though capital gains income, you know, it's only a maximum of 20% tax rate, whereas the rest of the world, you know, the highly paid people, your lawyer, your doctor, your surgeon, whatever, you know, you can pay as high as 39% in taxes, plus state taxes and local taxes and things. I mean, you know, it gets up there. But if you're a billionaire who takes his money in capital gains, you pay a maximum of 20%. Well, now it's up to 23.8%. God forbid, because that 3.8% is what's holding together Obamacare. And damn it, those billionaires are upset. They want to get rid of that tax. So now the Republicans, you know, who have to do what the billionaires want, after all, that's why they're in office, right? They're going to have to figure out, okay, how do we deliver a tax cut to these guys? And, you know, maybe reduce the political toxicity of it somehow magically. I don't know. And will they? And particularly, you know, as the hysteria amps up over, hysteria is maybe the wrong word, as the concern amps up over the possibility that there were third-party actors, whether it was Russian hackers or whether it was Republican trolls or even Democratic trolls, who were inside our voting machines in the last election, then maybe some Republicans and their billionaire backers are starting to swallow hard and go, uh-oh, you mean that we're going to have to clean up the election system so that we actually record the votes? What was it Stalin was said to have said? I think it was an apocryphal quote, but nonetheless, it's gone around for a long, long time. Doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes, right? Well, right now in the United States, the votes are counted by private for-profit companies in a way that is absolutely opaque. It is not transparent. And we just believe them, right? I don't believe them, but you know, we tend to as a country. So anyhow, oh, well, one last thing I wanted to share with you. There's so much news, but today is National Voter Registration Day, by the way, ironically. You know, people saying the biggest challenge to voter participation is apathy. I'd say, no, it's not apathy. It's Republicans. It's voter suppression. But this is mind-boggling. Betsy DeVos, there is a regulation that was put into place during the Obama administration that was supposed to take effect. It's starting in June of this year, a couple of months ago. It was referred to as the Borrower Defense Rule. And what it does is it says that if you borrow money in order to attend a phony university, you know, something like Trump University, something that's just a scam, that's not actually going to educate you, that's basically just a mill, they're just there to take your money. If you do that, then you have some legal recourses. You don't necessarily have to repay that loan. You can sue on their behalf. It required schools to disclose when their average students were unable to pay down their debt. It prohibited schools receiving federal funds from using forced arbitration agreements and class action waivers. It would have given students protections if they claimed that they took out loans to attend fraudulent schools. This is an entirely positive and reasonable thing to protect vulnerable young people and frankly, their parents who are co-signing their loans to protect them. And Betsy DeVos just paused it. It's amazing. The project on predatory student lending of the Legal Services Center at Harvard Law School is directed by a fellow by the name of Toby Merrill. Toby says the Trump administration is going out of its way to side with this predatory industry to the great harm of former students and taxpayers. Let's be clear, any delay is harmful to borrowers, and these new regulations should be implemented immediately. Also, Tuesday of this week, 18 state attorneys general will file a parallel brief in a different case asking the court to decide that the agency acted unlawfully in delaying the rule. But Betsy DeVos, she never had to borrow money to go to school. She was born a billionaire. She married a billionaire. What does she care? Right? In fact, what do most of them care? This is mind-boggling. Tony in Shirley, New York. Hey, Tony, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. What's up?
Hey, Tom. I was kind of questioning. I don't know whether or not you had the opportunity to see the healthcare, the Obamacare debate on CNN last night with Bernie.
I did not. I read an account of it this morning in the New York Times, but that's it.
I was a little bit disheartened only by a couple of facets, but to be brief. They naturally, Graham Cassidy did not do themselves any service by attending that debate.
Yeah, they were trying to defend the indefensible.
Exactly, and they did themselves more harm than good. But that being said, I always question why. I mean, I do. I'm an advocate of Bernie's. I stumped for Bernie as well, and I do believe with the majority of his platforms. But I think that there is a fundamental issue with how this information is being disseminated to the American public. I think that they should focus on the fact that, well, listen, why is Obamacare falling apart? Well, let's see. In 2015, Marco Rubio inserted language into a budget resolution bill that basically defunded the CSR. So now
he did away with the risk corridors, yeah.
Right. So if you add that in conjunction with states that were allowed to simply opt out, and naturally every state that in fact opted out were all Republican states.
Yep.
So this was basically
and then you add that to the fact that the Trump administration now has taken hundreds of millions of dollars that was set aside to help navigators, help people sign up, and to advertise the availability of the opening period, which will be, I think, 6 weeks now in December and January. They have decided not to spend any of that money, and in fact, even many of the government websites don't even any longer point to places that make it easy to sign up. So. Yeah.
And that's my point, is that if they would eliminate the fact that, okay, listen, we do have a better idea, but eliminate the fact of why Obamacare in itself is not functioning. Right. Is it because of its own devices, or is it because of, in fact, Republican interference in making sure that it fails? And point that out to the American public instead of, consistently saying, I am for single payer and this is much cheaper. We do understand that. But now, instead of that, the Republicans consistently attacking everybody regarding Obamacare and how it's imploding, how it's destroying the American public. Why not focus on why is it imploding?
Right.
What do you?
The reality, Tony, is that it's not imploding. There was a Republican last week who was saying, I forget which one, but now on national television, that there are hundreds of counties across the United States where there is no health care. No, there are zero. There's 100% of the United States has some health care available to it. There are many increasing numbers of counties where you have less competition or even just one provider. And as you point out, those tend to be the states that refuse to expand Medicaid. And it was Mike Pence who said that. Thank you, Troy. Yeah, it was Mike Pence who lied through his teeth last week.
It befuddles me how somebody says that because Cassidy kept saying continuously that somebody on his Facebook website paid for a family of two $39,800 for health insurance. And
really?
Yes. He said this consistently over and over again.
I think either somebody made that number up, or he's talking about David Koch's insurance bill.
Oh, he's saying this. Look at his website, at his Facebook page. It's on there.
Huh. Amazing. Yeah, I can't imagine anybody spending $39,000 a year for health insurance unless they're
why not just,
very, very wealthy.
Why not just take the hit and say, listen, I'll pay the fine to Obamacare instead. It's a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yeah, or if you've got that kind of money, I'll just pay my own way. Amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry I missed it, Tony. I predicted yesterday, we talked about it on the air, I predicted that it would be more of, it wouldn't be a debate as much as an infomercial, dueling infomercials, which is what, CNN and MSNBC tend to do rather than actual debates. But, I'm glad Bernie was there. The one thing, though, that I would say, you want to defend the Affordable Care Act. So do I. I think Obamacare is an important thing, and it's worthy of defense and all that. But that said, the reality is that it is based on for-profit health insurance companies, and anything based on for-profit health insurance companies is going to cost us more than it needs to, and it's going to make a bunch of people rich who really are doing nothing in terms of servicing our economy and our world. When you've got,
I agree that they should definitely insert single payer as an option, and they should drop the Medicare rate down to the age of 55, and at least phase that thought.
Oh, at least as a starting point, and then we could also do what Switzerland is the only advanced country in the world that does not have a national health care program, and what they do is they require everybody in the country to buy health insurance, but they also require all the health insurance providers and all the hospitals to operate on a not-for-profit basis. Excuse me. And that
in the United States.
Yeah, pardon me. I just inhaled some saliva there. I'm sorry, Tony. I got to take a break. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Okay, I can talk and breathe again. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. Jim, listening to X-Ray FM in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Can you hear me?
I'd rather you picked up the phone. It sounds like you're in the bottom of a tin can.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah. What's up?
Hi, Tom. My question is about oxygen. As we know, internal combustion engines, require oxygen to complete ignition.
Right.
With billions of engines in use every day on the Earth, is that equivalent to X amount of extra life? And is oxygen computed into global warming models at all?
Only in as much as it combines with carbon to form carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide or methane, all three of which contain oxygen. But keep in mind, Jim, 20% of our atmosphere roughly is oxygen. There's a massive amount of oxygen in our atmosphere. I think it's sort of 71% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, and everything else is just little tiny fragments. And, the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is like, 0.000 something percent. It's a very, very small percentage, which is why it's measured in parts per million. Methane measured in parts per billion. So while small changes in carbon-based chemicals like methane and carbon dioxide will rapidly and radically alter the atmosphere because carbon is so effective at basically holding heat in. Oxygen itself is not a greenhouse gas. And the levels of oxygen do go up and down hemispherically anyway, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. They go up during the summer, they go down during the winter, but they don't go up or down in any way that affects, human or animal life.
All right.
Make sense?
Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jim. Good talking with you. Sandra in Phoenix. Hey, Sandra, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Yes, thank you for everything you do, Tom.
Thank you.
I want to talk about voter registration. Kathy O'Neill, who's a data scientist, she wrote a book called Weapons of Math, M-A-T-H, Destruction, How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy.
Right.
I'd like to have your opinion and also her opinion on what would happen if everyone registered to vote as a Republican.
What's your goal in doing that?
Well, my story is that ever since I registered in the early 70s, and I didn't identify with either party, so I registered as a Republican, like my mother was, and observing from the computer side. Watching the election of 2004 and 2008, I came to believe that my vote was better protected as being registered as a Republican. And I didn't change my registration until I wanted to vote for Bernie in the primary.
In the primary, so you changed to Democrat.
Yeah.
Sandra, I understand the logic of what you're saying, and if this was 30 years ago, it would actually make sense because that was the principal demographic or the principal information that was used when they were looking at voter lists. But nowadays, with all this micro-targeting information that they're buying off Amazon and Facebook and whatnot, they don't need to know if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They just, they need to know what you like on Facebook to get to you. Or to bounce you off the rolls. Thanks for the call. Welcome back. Chris in Littleton, is that Littleton, Colorado, Chris?
Yeah, Littleton, like Columbine High School.
Yeah, what's up?
So I actually just finished Michael Hutchinson's book, Floating the Private Sea, and man, that was like, I'm going in for my first float this Friday, and I just thought of you, Tom.
Oh, those tanks are amazing. It's been decades since I've used one. They're just wonderful.
Yeah, he really introduced it to me, and I know he was a good friend of yours.
He was, yeah.
Rest in peace. But I, kind of wanted to speak to the climate change topic. I know that you and I'm trying to remember the representative that brought up the point that we could legitimately, in as much as we did with Philip Morris, bring a RICO suit against, climate change deniers. And I think apropos of the media angle and Daily Mail and Fox News, that could they be implicated in the RICO just as much as ExxonMobil?
I don't know. I'm not an authority on how exactly RICO is prosecuted. It's the Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization Act, and what you have to demonstrate is that the organization itself has been either set up or has been corrupted for the purpose of committing illegal acts. And it'd be a great question for Mike Papantonio. We'll have to get him on one of these times to ask, because he was involved in that litigation against the tobacco companies. And I don't know if RICO played a big part of that or if it was a small part of it. I frankly, it's not something that I'm an expert on, Chris. I'm sorry. But I do think that at the very least, the conspiracy laws, there's some nasty stuff that has gone on. But I'd like to get a lawyer checking into it. Shirley in Chicago. Hey, Shirley, what's on your mind today?
Hi. I wanted to comment, Tom, and I'd like your feedback on the thick-headed powers that be that don't realize that they're taking a knee because they were fighting for racially,
justice.
What was going on with the cops.
Yeah.
And that dissent and protest is not disloyalty. That taking a knee had nothing to do with the anthem or the flag. It was a protest, and that's legal, and that's okay.
It's not only legal and okay, it's the American way.
Of course. The other comment is, why are we playing the national anthem at sports events? I go to a movie, I go to a play, I go anywhere, any kind of presentation. I don't have to sing the national anthem.
Right.
That's not the place for it.
We do it because the Pentagon started spending millions of dollars, started giving millions of dollars to the various leagues starting in 2005. And I think that was because they were having a hard time recruiting people to be cannon fodder for 2 wars that we've been lied into.
Oh, right. plus the fact that they were playing games, football and baseball, before the national anthem became the national anthem.
Yeah, it's true.
And so it doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
So, and they're thick-headed. They just want to sing the praises of whatever nonsense they're believing.
Well, they've got their bumper sticker and they're sticking with it. I get that. And Trump, he's just doing a classic Nixon. And of course, Roger Stone is his oldest friend and advisor. Roger Stone has Richard Nixon tattooed on his back. So it shouldn't surprise us that Donald Trump is pulling a Richard Nixon. It used to be hippies and blacks.
He's worse than Nixon.
Pardon?
I think he's worse than Nixon.
Oh yeah, he's not anywhere near as smart as Nixon was to begin with.
For sure, but he has no conscience.
Yeah, well, there's
care
that.
About anything.
There's that too. I think you could probably have said that about Richard Nixon, but I suspect that there was a much larger spark of humanity in Richard Nixon than there is in Donald Trump. Surely got to move along, but thank you for the call. Well said. Tony in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Hey, Tony, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I love your show.
Thanks.
I got a text message today from vote.org to double check my registration status.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I'm good to go. But my wife is no longer registered, and she's always voted.
Really?
We had no idea about that. And I posted it on Facebook for my friends. A couple of my friends checked. They're not registered anymore either.
Amazing. So Chris Kobach has been at work in Virginia, apparently.
I guess because we have that gubernatorial election coming up in November, and it's actually really disturbing and frightening in a way that they can do this.
Is it too late to register to vote in Virginia?
Well, according to vote.org, we still have time. So I'm urging everybody in Virginia to double-check your status. Go to vote.org.
Of course, you know what they did in Georgia? There was a big, effort to register people in the 6th District of Georgia when John Ossoff was running against Karen Handel in that race. And something like 50,000 people registered. But the Republicans who controlled the Secretary of State's office said, we just don't have the staff to deal with this. We will enter these registrations after the election's over.
Tom, I don't understand how in our state, the governor currently is a Democrat. How can this happen?
I think your Secretary of State is a Republican, isn't he?
It's a completely Republican-controlled legislature.
Yeah, and see, the Secretary of State controls the election process, not the governor. I'm not certain that your Secretary of State's a Republican, but I believe so.
I just wanted to get the message out for everyone in Virginia, especially. This election coming up in November is very important. We've got to get out and vote. So
there you go.
Check your status.
There you go. Yep, absolutely. Totally agree. Tony, thank you for sharing that. Andrew in Anniston, Alabama. Hey, Andrew, got a minute to the end of the show. What's up?
Yeah, quick question. I voted Democrat. I'm from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I voted Democrat in the previous election. They did the runoff today. I'm sure you've heard about.
Mm-hmm.
They told me that they passed a law August the 1st that disallowed me to vote because I had voted Democrat previous. I was curious as what you knew about that in your opinion.
Wait a minute. You're saying that they didn't allow you to vote in the primary because, had you already voted in the Democratic primary and tried to?
Yes, sir.
And you tried to vote in the Republican primary?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you only get to pick one. You have to pick one primary to vote in every state. So that's what that's about, Andrew. Yeah. Thanks a lot for the call. That's not unreasonable. You pick your party, pick your guy, and then go with it. So, anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. Apologies for my coughing fit. I'll be back and better tomorrow, I promise. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. I mean, it really does require you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're in. We'll see you then.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com.